Thank you. Please record, madam. Thank you. Now, Brigadier, this statement forming part of the record, the information being said that actually came from Mbekiseni, as per your testimony. I had an opportunity to, again, had a look at the statement. And what struck my mind, or what I was able to identify in the statement on paragraph 3, is that this Mbekiseni himself is not the originator of the information that is contained in here. He himself says, I got this information from one Ntanzi, from another Ntanzi. In other words, Mbekiseni himself got this information from a person that he refers to as some other Ntanzi. Do you understand?
I understand, my lord, and I'm not disputing that.
Thank you.
But the fact that I was saying, in this statement, it is clearly explicit by Absalom Zungu that accused 1 and 2 were involved in the killing of Senzo Meyiwa.
Bathi-ke ufakazi malana nodaba lwale statement lesi sakababa u-Absalom Zungu bokubaba ka-Constable Zungu-ke kukhona la malana no-paragraph 3 lapho bhalwe khona ukuthi uMbekiseni lo bathi ubaba kaZungu wathola-ke ulwazi kuyenakhe akuyena umuntu onelungelo mhlawumbe noma oselungelweni lokuthi kade kuye kade akhuluma lo lwazi lolu-ke kepha ulwazi lolu walithola komunye umuntu bambiza ukuthi uNtanzi bese ufakazi athi yebo ngiyavuma lokho kunjalo wakhuluma lokho kepha-ke wathi umsolwa wokuqala futhi nomsolwa wesibili-ke banesandla ekushoneni kukaSenzo Meyiwa.
That is what is contained in the statement, Brigadier. And for you to say that, that is what Mbekiseni is saying, that accused number 1 and 2 were involved in the commission of this offense, is a misnomer, because he says in the statement, I got that information from this other Ntanzi. In other words, the originator or the source of this information, it's not him, Mbekiseni, but it is this other Ntanzi.
Bathi yebo lanoma kunjalo-ke kepha ukhumbule khona njalo ukuthi uMbekiseni lo yena-ke kuNtanzi-ke akuyena umuntu olethe ulwazi malana nodaba lwestatement lesi kepha-ke omunye uNtanzi olethe ulwazi elethela noma etshela uMbekiseni ulwazi lolo-ke bese kuMbekiseni watshela-ke ubaba kaZungu-ke lapho kuZungu senior bambiza ngokuthi kuZungu senior ukuthi umsolwa wokuqala futhi umsolwa wesibili banesandla kulodlame.
No, but my lord, that's not what I said. The person who made a statement to me is Absalom Zungu. The name of Mbekiseni came as to when the question was asked to me whether Mr. Absalom Zungu was the source of this information. And I said, I do recall that there was another person, insofar as I could recall. And that's how we got to Mbekiseni. So there's no assertion from me that I said Mr. Mbekiseni is the source. I said, I remember that there was another person, and we spoke to that person, and that person was not willing to come forward in fearful of his life, my lord.
Athi yebo noma kunjalo kepha ngisakhumbula ukuthi lo mbuzo waqhamuka ngesikhathi kade abuza kubaba ka-Constable Zungu ukuthi ngabe uye yini umnini wolwazi lolu-ke bese wathi yena kubaba ka-Constable Zungu cha yena-ke umnini othizeni wolwazi lolu kepha ulwazi lwaluzwa-ke komunye umuntu kulapho aqhamuka khona-ke igama lomlisa uthizeni bambiza ngokuthi uMbekiseni Ntanzi.
Now, would you agree with me then that paragraph 3, Mbekiseni, in fact, Absalom Zungu the senior says, Mbekiseni told him that he got this information from another Ntanzi.
Ngabe kuvuma yini ukuthi ubaba ka-Constable Zungu Absalom Zungu uyena-ke wakutshela ukuthi ulwazi lolu yena waluthola kuMbekiseni Ntanzi kepha-ke uMbekiseni Ntanzi naye kukhona la wazwa khona-ke malana nalolu daba.
Yes, I'm not denying it, my lord.
Thank you.
Athi yebo angikuphiki-ke lokho.
Thank you, my lord. Back to what the court asked me and whether or not this statement should stand. Now, on the trajectory of the information that is narrated in the statement here, it is undoubtedly clear that it is a trail of hearsay. It is a trail of hearsay. So, and hearsay is not admissible, my lord. So, as it is, this statement, it carries no value unless this other Ntanzi can come and testify and say, I am the originator of this information and I'm aware under what circumstances these assertions were made. Then the matter must just die there, my lord. In other words, the statement carries no value with regard to the assertions that are contained in here that accused number 1 and number 2 were involved in the commission of this offense. So it's a trail of hearsay. That would be my submission.
Mr. Baloyi, what's your view?
As the court, please, my lord, the court will recall that at the inception of the evidence of Brigadier Gininda, we were at pains to avoid this hearsay evidence. In fact, if I recall, the evidence of Brigadier Gininda was to the effect that he received a report from Mr. Absalom Zungu, because as court officials, we are aware that we may not lead hearsay evidence. But my late colleague then went and introduced the hearsay evidence. And we cannot stop him. If a party wishes to introduce hearsay evidence, then they must, lie on the bet that they make. And Mr. Ngomsolwa has introduced hearsay evidence at his own accord, well aware what the legal position is. He must, the defense must therefore, my lord, sleep on the bet that they've made. It cannot be retracted, it's on record. We submit, my lord, that it has to remain on record. The statement is already admitted, despite the fact that it's, as Advocate Mnisi pointed out, it's triple hearsay evidence. I mean, that's why we didn't call Mr. Zungu Senior to testify, as his evidence, according to Exhibit Triple U, amounts to triple hearsay evidence.
Okay, you have to address me at the end of the case, Mr. Balui and Mr. Mnisi, okay?
As it please the court, my lord.
Yeah.
I just pray that I don't forget that.
Hello?
I'm saying I will just pray that I don't forget. What the
No,
court
me, I
is-
won't forget.
Yes, my lord. Thank you, my lord.
Yeah.
Yes. Basically, we would not have requested that this statement be retracted, but the information contained therein be disregarded, my lord. It is evidence, of course. It cannot be retracted, but request that the information contained therein, on the basis of the fact that it is inadmissible, it should then be disregarded, my lord. As it please the court, my lord. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mana nodaba lolu statement ke kade acela ke ummeli wakho ke mnumzana ukuthi inkosi enkantolo ke ingasamukeli statement lesi ngoba ke inkulumo le statement lesi akuyona ke inkulumo yomuntu lo ibhalile ngaphansi kwe statement kepha ke inkulumo yomuntu ayize komunye ke umuntu lapho khona kathi ungizwa nje kuphela kwenkulumo ke loyo ke kepha ke uthi le nkulumo lena inkosi enkantolo engayamukeli njengofakazi bala inkantolo ngoba ke ayinasihlahla noma ayinamsindo malana necala lelinu ke libhekane nalo ngaphambi kwenkosi enkantolo ke bese ehlangothile lezombuso ke laphendula ke lapho ke malana inkulumo le ummeli unayilethile lathi ummeli owaletha ke le nkulumo lena ke futhi nofakazi lobu ke ummeli osele washona ongasekho la ngaphambi kwenkosi enkantolo ke umnumzana uMngomezulu futhi kwamele ukuthi ihlangothi labamelweni ke bese ulale phezulu lombhedo abazibekele wona ke lapho ke futhi washo khona zathi inkulumo istatement lesi sele singaphambi kwenkosi enkantolo futhi sele basamukela lapho njengofakazi baka Triple U.
Thank you, my lord. Thank you, Brigadier. But in any event, my lord, we will come and deal with this point as in our main arguments.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, my lord. Now, your investigation is at this point, at the point where you already have the statement from Mr. Zungu, the senior, which is fraught with hearsay. And then from there, is there anything or any investigation that happened after the 17th of November 2019, which was to try and find out the authenticity of the information that was contained in this hearsay evidence with regard to the implicit of accused number 1 and number 2 in the commission of the offense? In other words, from the 17th of November 2019, what then happened?
Manje ke udaba afisa ukuthi umeli ke alwazi ukuthi ngabe mhlawumbe khona ke ukuphenya kwecala mhlawumbe amanye amanyathelo wahamba ngenhloso yokuthi uphenya kwecala ngemuva kwelanga la nge-17 zaka November ngomnyaka ka 2019 ngemuva kokuthi uthola ke statement lesike saka mnumzana uAbsalom Zungu ke ubaba ka Constable Zungu ke la kade acela khona ke malana nongizwa wenkulumo yakhe kade awuzwile.
Yes, my lord, a lot happened. Investigation proceeded from this statement, and as I indicated yesterday and today, that part of the things that was done was to get Bekiseni to collaborate, at least that part from Mr. Absalom, which was futile in terms of fearful of his life.
Athi yebo okuningi kwenzeka lapho ke ngemuva ukuthi athola statement lesi saka baba ka Constable Zungu Absalom Zungu ke lapho ke wazama enza ke inhlelo mhlawumbe inzame zokuthi athole ke lo muntu abambiza ngokuthi umbhekiseni Zungu Ntanzi lapho ke ekuthizeni ezazokhuluma ke ngofakazi bakhe ke obuzohambisana nobufakazi baka baba ka Constable Zungu ke lapho ke kepha wanqaba ukuze yena ke futhi uyasaba usabela impilo yakhe.
Cold case analysis, my lord, as I've indicated on them was then done to to get the details, specifics now, and that led to various cases that are referred to in relation to number 1, accused number 1, which were then assigned. So these were not cases relating to this matter. It was parallel cases that we identified, that we hold, and we needed to have them on site. So we embarked on the cold case analysis to say, let us identify them on these cases because they were there, pursue them on those cases, while then one is embarking on evidence that can be collected in this matter.
Athi lapho khona ke macala kade khona ke malana nomsolwa wokuqala ke angahambisani kala leli esingalo la inkantolo ke namuhla ke kepha kuqethe komnye amacala ke lapho ke ngesikhathi kusenza kuphenyo lwabo noma usesha kwabo kwecala kulaba bathi khona ke abaqinise kule cala leli ke bese bathola ubufakazi obuhambisanayo noma ubufakazi obukhethekile laba khona ukuthi bamthole khona ke umsolwa wokuqala.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now, with the further profiling of accused number one. Let's now concentrate on accused number one. Because of the information that is contained in this statement by Mr. Zungu, that culminated to the unearthing of the case against him, which was the case of the possession of drugs, not so. If I'm trying to follow what you're saying well.
Mana icala leli namacala amanye la khuluma ngawo malana nomsolo oqala ngabe ukhuluma ngecala leli kade khona ke aphosa icala malana nokudayisa idakamizwa.
Yes, that you're following me correctly. Yes, it did result to the unearthing of the possession of drugs docket that was already opened in Tembisa. But that case then led to possession of ammunition. But subsequent, or maybe prior to that, it also, the profiling unearthed other 2 cases of attempted murder in forced arrest.
Athi yebo khona ke kunjalo kepha khumule ngesikhathi kade senza ke lo cwaningo lolo ukuthi asathola khona ke amanye amacala wakhe ke la kade kwaphethe khona ke amabullet futhi namanye amacala kade azama khona ke ukukhropha khona kade azama khona ukubulala Foslorus lecala leli kade khuluma ngalo qala lidakamiswa icala sethembisa ke bese amacala amabili ozama ukubulala kade amacala seFoslorus.
Yes, that's what was discovered in the cold case analysis insofar as accused number 1 is concerned.
Athi lokho ke sakuthola mana nomsolo oqala ngesikhathi kade senza ucwaningo lwethu lamacala akhe.
Thank you. And eventually that led to a warrant of arrest being applied for, being authorized against him in respect of the drug case, and ultimately to his arrest on the 30th of May 2020, not so.
Lapho ke khona nenza khona ke isicelo sokuthi na kuyaboshwe ke umsolo wakhe bese nabhala ke incwadi lapho ke bese begunyazisa mhlawumbe bayiletha ngokuthi banikeza imvume ke lapho ke ngenyanga ngelanga la nge-30 zaka May
2020.
ngomnyaka 2020 lapho kweshwa khona ke boshela amacala okudayisa ke idakamizwa.
Correct, my lord, insofar as the possession or the drug dealing charge, the Tembisa 219 case, that warrant was obtained. But prior to that, there was already a warrant of arrest sitting in one of the dockets, in other words, available, which was not executed in one of the attempted murder cases of Foslorus. We then also applied for the warrant of arrest on the second attempted murder, which was issued. So there were 3 warrants at the end of the day. So 2 on attempted murder charges and 1 on this drug dealing case.
Athi yebo khona ke kunjalo wagcina ke boshwa ke ngelanga la nge-30 zaka May ngomnyaka 2020 ngemuva kokuthi bona kade wathole ke imvume yokuthi bakuthole ke bakubophe ke lapho ke mana licala leli lasethembisa ke le case 219 futhi kade khona ke warrant of arrest kade ikhishiwe lapho ke malana icala lakho lokuzama ukubulala ke lapho ke Foslorus futhi bese kwaba khona ke enye esithathu ke lapho ke incwadi ke benayo ukuthi zima kubophe ke ngayo ke malana nelicala laseFoslorus lokuzama ukubulala.
Thank you, Brigadier. But the crux of the matter is, on the strength of the warrant of arrest that was authorized under the drug case, the drug case, the Tembisa case, that is when then accused number 1 got arrested. Upon his arrest, then there were this allegation that the state came up with that he got interviewed firstly by Sergeant Mohula, who indicated that accused number 1 seemed to have knowledge about what happened with the death of Meyiwa, and that exposed everything which led us to this extent. And so,
But asinjalo ukuthi ngemuva kokuthi na ke aboshwe ke ngelanga la nge-30 zaka May ngomnyaka 2020 boshwe icala sethembisa lokudayisa ke idakamiswa ke lapho ke kula khona uqhamuka khona kumnumzana Sergeant Mukula bese wathi kumphina ke ngemibuzo ke bese ngemuva kwalokho bese amthwesa ke icala leli aqhamuka ngalo la ngaphambi kwenkantolo lesikwana ke manje.
That is correct, my lord. So the Tembisa warrant of arrest was the first one to be initiated, but then the Foslorus one followed while he was facing charges in Tembisa. It was also, those warrants were also dealt with, my lord, and he made appearances. But yes, the sparking point, or the starting point, if one can say that, was the Tembisa warrant of arrest.
Athi yebo kunjalo ke icala uqala la kade aboshwe melana nalo ke kungemuva ukuthi bakhiphe incwadi ukuthi nakaboshwe kamaphoyisa lapho ke warrant of arrest ngesingisi ke lapho ke mayelana icala sethembisa lokudayisa ke idakamiswa ke bese ngemuva kwalokho bese wakhipha incwadi uqala ukuthi nakaboshwe mayelana icala ukuzama ukubulala ke lapho ke Foslorus.
Thank you, Brigadier. Are you aware of the arrest of accused person, of accused number 1 by a group of police in 20? Let me just get the date very specific, madam. May I just request a minute from? Thank you for the indulgence, my lord. Now, Brigadier, let's go to the beach here. Are you aware of an incident of the arrest of the accused, that's now accused number 1, around March in 2019?
Bathi ngabe unalo yini ulwazi ngesikhathi kade uboshwa ke umnumzana oqala nomsolo oqala ngenyanga kaMarch ngomnyaka 2019
in relation to this case?
mayelana icala leli.
So I'm aware of the arrest, my lord, but it is incorrect to say it was in this case. He was arrested for Tembisa case 217 of 3/2019, and that is the docket of drug dealing. That's what he was arrested for.
Athi yebo nginalo ke ulwazi lokho kepha asilona ke kade ngabusha uthi kade ngaboshwa lapho mina necala leli kepha kade aboshwa mina necala sethembisa lapho ko case 217 of 2019.
And that is the case, my lord, that we picked up when we were doing the cold case analysis, that he was arrested, but they could not link him, and then the case went cold. So we went to draw that docket at the archives. He was not arrested by that team, by this team, because by the time we drew it, that matter was already dealt with. We only got a statement that directs us to accused number 1 in November 2019. Prior to that, we had no knowledge or sight on him. Once we had then the statement of Absalom Zungu making us to focus on him, cold case analysis was done. This Tembisa case was then picked up, and then we went to draw it from the archives, investigated it, and then subsequently the warrant was done. So I know insofar as what the docket is telling me, and the charges that he was facing there was drug dealing and not this matter.
Athi lapho kade engaboshiwe mina necala leli kepha kade aboshiwe mina necala lakhe lasethembisa ke lapho ludayisa ke igakamizwa ke lapho ke bese bathi kade khona ke ama cold case analysis la kade yakhona ke futhi lapho ke bese ngemuva ukuthi bathole ke ulwazi lolu ngelanga la nge-19 ngenyanga kaNovemba ngomnyaka 2019 kuqhamuka ngelanga la nge-17 kaNovemba ngomnyaka 2019 ulwazi lolu kade qhamuka kubaba kaConstable Zungu ke kulabo bona baqala beza khona ke ukuphenya kwecala labo mayelana nomsola wokuqala ke lapho ke ngemuva ukuthi kade abatshelile mayelana nolwazi lolu kade analo ke mayelana nomsola wokuqala ke lapho ke athi futhi ujobekile wathi ufakazi kulaba basuka khona ke bahamba baya e-archive lapho ke bakhipha ke docket lelo kade anecala mayelana nalo lapha ke Tembisa ke bese ngemuva kwalokho kulawa boshwa khona.
Sorry, case number 217 of which month?
Of 3/2019,
Of
my
3/2019.
lord.
Okay.
Correct, my lord. Tembisa.
Yeah.
Just a second, my lord, just a minute of indulgence. May I request just a minute, madam, just to confirm this aspect, yes.
Take your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the indulgence, my lord. Thank you, Brigadier. You know the reason why I'm asking whether you have knowledge about this Clorcop arrest. Not really Clorcop arrest, but of the arrest in March 2019 of accused number 1, because this is telling me that around 20, you might not remember the date so well, but it was in 2019. He was accosted by police people. He was in Tembisa. And he was accosted by a group of police. Some of them were in uniform and some of them were in private clothes. He specifically remembers, amongst those who were there, a certain Mr. Mudau, I don't know their ranks, a certain Mr. Mudau, a certain Mr. Baloyi, and as I've said, and one other policeman who was also in uniform.
Athi ke sathu sokuthi akuze ke mina nalombuzo ukuthi ke umsolo athi kade kumnyaka ka-2019 kepha ngenyanga kaMarch kepha ilanga akasalikhumbuli kahle kuyilanga liphi-ke lapho-ke la kade khona kwaboshwa amaphoyisa amaningi amaphoyisa akhona kamanye kade egqoke ingubo zabo zeziphoyisa futhi amanye egqoke ingubo zabo zasekhaya futhi amaphoyisa la uyakhumbula ukuthi khona ke iphoyisa ababesithi uMudawu noBaloyi futhi namanye nje amaphoyisa kepha amanye akawakhumbuli kahle ukuthi kade kwamaphoyisa abo bani.
Yes, I'm listening, my lord.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Dr.
Athi yebo ngilalele.
Yeah. Now he's telling me that when they accosted him, they were driving in a kumbi, like I think it's a New Zealand kumbi, it's in Pendulo kind of a thing, but I think it's a kumbi. This guy who accosted him was driving in a kumbi.
Athi amaphoyisa la amaningi ambopha-ke lapho kade beshayela ke ikhumbi noma itekisi lezi siphoyisa athi cabangi nginisani noma impendulo.
I'm listening, my lord.
Thank you.
Following.
Athi yebo ngilalele.
And upon his arrest, he was then taken to Clorcop.
Athi ngemuva uthengina bambophe-ke bamthatha bamikisa-ke eClorpop.
I think that is where the offices of these people who arrested him were, I would assume, because they were just offices, according to him.
Athi ucabanga ukuthi mhlawumbe kula kokade khona kamahhovisi lamaphoyisa kade kambophile la kade bamikise khona-ke ngoba kade khona kamagumbi ahlukene amahhovisi lapho-ke.
I'm listening, my lord.
Athi yebo ngilalele.
Thank you. And then he says, upon the arrival at Clorcop, they put him in one of the unoccupied offices there. They also asked him questions in relation to the death of Senzo.
Athi ngesikhathi kade lapho-ke bamfaka kwigumbi elikhethekile ama kwigumbi elithizeni lapho-ke ngesikhathi kade bemfake khona-ke kulelo gumbi baqala khona bamphenya noma bambuza-ke imibuzo-ke mayelana necala lakaSenzo.
I'm listening, my lord. Yes, I'm following.
Athi yebo ngilalele.
Thank you. When he informed them that he knows nothing about this, they then started to assault him.
Athi ngesikhathi kade aphendula amaphoyisa abathe ukuthi nakanalo-ke ulwazi mayelana nokushona kukaSenzo amaphoyisa aqala amshaya khona lapho-ke.
I'm following, my lord.
Athi yebo ngilalele.
He continued to deny any knowledge about the death of Senzo. Then the assault also continued, but when they realized that there's nothing that they would be able to extract from him, they then stopped the assault and took him to another office.
Athi lapho la waqhubeka khona-ke nake ebatshela ukuthi akanalo ulwazi mayelana nokushona kukaSenzo kepha-ke amaphoyisa nawo aqhubeka lapho-ke engayekile ukumshaya-ke lapho-ke futhi ngesikhathi kade amaphoyisa ebuka ukuthi akanalo ngempela-ke ulwazi noma akanayo incazelo kade atshela amaphoyisa-ke bamkhipha kulelo gumbi lelo-ke bese bamletha bamnikisa kulinye igumbi noma ihhovisi khona ngalapho.
I'm following, my lord.
Athi yebo ngilalele.
Thank you. In this subsequent office that they took him to, there were also other individuals there who he identified as a certain Mr. Lishabane. There was also a Sibiya there. He's not so sure whether it's general or what, but he's telling me that the way in which he was being addressed, it sounded like he was a high-ranking officer. There was also a Makubo there. There was also Constable Zungu, the one who gave you the information which led you to Absalom Zungu, his father.
Athi ngesikhathi kade bemikise-ke kwigumbi lesibili-ke ngemuva kokuthi kade bamfake kwigumbi lokuqala ngemuva ukuthi bamkhiphe kwigumbi lokuqala leli kade bamfake kulona bemshayela kulona bemphenya-ke ngemibuzo-ke lapho-ke bamikisa kwigumbi lesibili ngesikhathi bafika kwigumbi lesibili-ke lapho-ke kulawo bona khona amanye amaphoyisa kade akhona-ke lapho-ke umnumzana uLeshabane umnumzana uSibiya akathi mhlawumbe ugeneral noma kade kuye omkhulu kula amaphoyisa kade akhona-ke lapho-ke futhi uMakhubo futhi uConstable Zungu-ke ukhumula ukuthi indodana kababa u-Absalom Zungu ulo owanilethela-ke ulwazi.
My lord, can I then have an opportunity to comment on what has been said before we move forward? Because a lot, I won't be able to remember all these things.
Okay,
Is
no,
that
fine.
fine? Yeah, I mean, can I proceed? So, my lord, insofar as the Tembisa case 217, because I want to start there, Tembisa 217 of 3/2019, there is no statement in that docket.
Athi-ke mina necala sethembisa-ke leli lokudayisa-ke idakamizwa-ke case 217/03/ of 2017 athi lapho-ke akukho istatement esikhona-ke ukuthi ngaphakathi kwedocket lelo.
No.
My apologies.
Yeah, wait. So there is no statement that implicates or suggests that accused number one was questioned about this case. In other words, or that he was arrested for the matter before court and that he was then taken through interrogation or interviews insofar as that docket is concerned. There's no such statement, my lord.
Ngiyaxolisa-ke lapho-ke nesilungiso sikhona-ke athi mina nacala sethembisa lapho-ke akukho la babhalile khona-ke mhlawumbe babhale statement khona-ke bathi umso lokuqala unesandla lelicala leli esingalo ngaphambi kwenkantolo.
What is contained in that docket, my lord, from the beginning, from A1 right up to the end, is the issues relating to drugs, and up to the time that the case went cold, we came on the picture. The case was reopened. It went through the trial process with. I don't mean to defame the accused, but he was convicted for those charges and not the matter relating to this matter. For the charges, when I say those charges, I'm referring to the charges of possession of drugs and ammunition. That is the conviction or announcement that was announced by the court, my lord, in Tembisa.
athi lapho ke ngemuva icala likade beliyekile kuphela ke nje kepha ngemuva ukuthi bona ke bafike lapho bese baphina futhi balivusa icala lelo ke ngemuva ukuthi balivusa icala bese wahamba waqhamuka phambi kwenkantolo balixoxa icala lakhe ke lapho ke bese inkosi enkantolo mthethweni icala bese wagwetshwa ke lapho ke malana nokudayisa idakamiswa ukuthi noma bamthole ephethe idakamiswa futhi ethole ke ephethe ke amabullet.
Now, relating to this matter specifically, my lord, because in March, I was already assigned to lead this investigation in March 2019. At no stage, myself or any of my team members informed me that there was such information in Tembisa, because if there was such pursuance, it would have been important for me to know as I'm carrying the docket. You know, we followed a lot of information on this docket, which turned out not to be true at times or inaccurate, but you followed it once it's brought to you. So at no stage was I informed that accused one in particular was a suspect in this matter. The only time, and really the only time where his name came up was with the Zungus, both the junior and the senior. That is really what made me focus, or made us focus on accused number one, my lord. And that's the essence of what led me to it, not the March story. I'm not aware of it, my lord.
Athi-ke ufakazi cha yena akanaloko ulwazi ukuthi ngabe yini eyenzeka ngenyanga kaMarch ngomnyaka ka-2019 ngoba ke lapho ke kukho umuntu waqhamuka kuyena ke leqembu lakhe kwafika wamtshela mayelana nolwazi kade ke analoko mayelana necala leli ke lapho ke kepha ke yena ulwazi waqala ke ulwazi loqala alaqhamuka kuyena ke lwaqhamuka ngozungu ingane kababa uAbsalom Zungu ke ngesikhathi kade ahlezi nabo phansi bobabili lapho ke ngesikhathi kade bekhuluma mayelana negama lakaMsolwa uqala.
We can then proceed, my lord, I think, yeah. And then,
Thank you. Then he further says that upon being questioned again about his knowledge about the death of Senzo, now in the presence of Lishabane, Sibiya, Makubu, and Zungu, his response being the fact that he knows nothing. That is when then Makubo suggested that he should rather be released because it is clear that he does not seem to have knowledge, or he does not seem to have been involved in the commission of, in the death of Senzo.
Athi-ke lapho-ke ngesikhathi kade akhulumisana nomnumzana uLeshabane umnumzana uSibiya futhi kade athuthi mhlawumbe ugeneral noma kade kuye kade nesikhundla esiphezulu kunesikhundla salamanye amaphoyisa kade akhona-ke lapho-ke uMakhubo noZungu-ke athi yena wabatshela ukuthi akanalo ulwazi ngokushona kukaSenzo-ke lapho-ke bese umnumzana uMakhubo athi kumele bamdedele ngoba lo muntu lo uyatshengakala ukuthi cha ngempeleni akanalo ulwazi.
my lord, look, I was not obviously in that meeting, so if it did take place, even to begin with, I won't be able to comment. But what I can say and comment on, my lord, is insofar as Tembisa case 217 of 3/2019, because it is clearly indicated there that he was arrested for the case of dealing in drugs. The reason of him not being pursued further is because the matter was withdrawn due to the absence of the 212 statement for the authentication of the drugs. Those are the reasons that are contained in that docket. That's the first part.
Athi-ke kuphuzo oqala ngathanda ukuthi akhulume mayelana nodaba lwakhona-ke uma ngabe lo mhlangano kade buhlelile noma uma ngabe lo mhlangano kade ukhona empeleni akanalo ulwazi umhlangano loyo-ke ngoba kade engekho kulowo mhlangano loyo-ke kepha athi mana icala sethembisa lelo ukuthi waboshwa-ke boshwela ukudayisa idakamiswa noma ukutholakala inidakamiswa kuyena-ke yilona icala ngathi akhulume ngalo-ke lapho-ke ngoba icala kade bengaqhubekile nalo kade belimisile ngoba kade bengenawo ama-statement kade kumele ukuthi bawathole ama-212 statement.
Secondly, my lord, there is no statement in that docket of Warrant Officer Makubo forming part of that investigation or interview at any stage, from the initial stage up to the time the matter went to trial. Even when we were involved, Warrant Officer Makubo did not submit any statement in that docket. So there was no statement that indicates, or perhaps one can take it further, even on the diary, the investigation diary, that says in that docket in particular around that time, because that's the only matter I can refer to, he was present.
Athi futhi okwesibili lapho akukho statement sakamnumzana uMakhubo ngaphakathi kwe-docket le lasethembisa icala lasethembisa lakaMsolwa la kade akhuluma khona ukuthi mhlawumbe kade kade akhona-ke noma kade mhlawumbe komunye wabalekeleli noma kade komunye kade alekelela-ke abaseshi becala.
Lastly, my lord, I'm saying this with greatest respect, I do not understand if somebody gives an information to you, how do you spontaneously at that spot come to a conclusion that someone is not involved, he must be released? I mean, if the assertion is correct, Warrant Officer Makubo, as I'm saying, is a warrant officer, and if the assertion that is given to me is also correct, that there were two generals there, the seniority is very clear. Generals will make that decision. So I don't understand how will a warrant officer, without even investigation, then will impose the decision in the presence of the general, and the generals must just follow. That doesn't make sense to me, my lord, with greatest respect.
Athi lokho ngenhlonipho-ke enkulu akwenza umcabango othizini like yena mhlawumbe umcabango oqondile mayelana ukuthi umnumzana warrant officer Makubo ngoba kade ngoba esikhathini samanje usase warrant officer namanje uthi na acabange nomhlanga aqhamuke nephuzu lokuthi kumele ukuthi bamdedeleke umsola uqala-ke lapho-ke ngapha akhulume lokho ngaphambi kwabo-general bakhe ababili kade bekhona-ke lapho-ke lento lathi into engeze yenzeke.
Yes, my lord, that's the essence of.
Yeah, thank you, Brigadier. Let me just correct one perception from the last point of your analysis. Mr. Makubo, from the instruction that I'm getting from Mr. Sibiya, never said he should be released. Mr. Makubo only suggested that he should be released because it appears to him, Mr. Makubo, that he bears no knowledge about the death of Senzo. So it is therefore a little bit ingenious for you to say that Mr. Makubo is the one who gave an order that he should be released. I just
Suggested. Let's not argue about non-essentials. If you suggest something,
Yes,
if you had said somebody else other than Makubo suggested, but you are saying your instructions are Makubo suggested.
Yes.
Yeah, he suggested to the generals.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, and he was released thereafter.
It means the
Yeah,
suggested, it means the general brought his suggestion.
Yes, the suggestion was
So there's
taken.
nothing wrong in that.
Is
I'm
that so?
only correcting the brigadier who says it is very strange for a junior officer to instruct senior officers to release somebody else. It was only a suggestion. And on the basis of the information that they had then, they said, no, Makubo is Melana now. Exactly. That's just the perception that I'm trying to correct. Thank you, sir. But let us proceed. And indeed, he was released and he never was taken to court.
Bathi yebo empeleni bamdedela ke lapho kakakaze bamthathe bamnikise ngaphambi kwenkantolo.
I'm not aware, my lord. Like I said, what I know is that he was released because the 212 statement, and that's what is contained in the docket, was unavailable to take the matter forward. That's what I can comment about.
Athi yebo lapho ke bamdedela ke ngoba kade kungekho ama 212 statement lapho kade uthi abe khona ngaphakathi kwedocket.
Now, thank you, Brigadier. Before we proceed and develop this aspect of what happened at Torko, it's to me, it appears like a similar method that you and your team used in the arrest of accused number 1 in 2020 was also used in March 2019 when he got arrested and taken to Torko. And the reason why I'm saying that is as follows.
Athi manje kumele malana na nokubona kwakhe ke kusetshangala ngathi nenasebenzisa ke indlela eyodwa ke ngomnyaka 2020 ngesikhathi ngibopha ke umsola oqala yakhe futhi indlela eyodwa le kade isetshenziswa amaphoyisa ngomnyaka 2019 ngoMarch ngesikhathi kade eboshwa ngesikhathi kade benikisa lapho eClotco.
Now, in 2020, when you and your team, that included Sergeant Mkhula, Mabena, etc., when you arrested accused number 1, or when accused number 1 was arrested, it was not directly on this case, but it was on the basis of the case of dealing in drugs. But subsequent thereto, you questioned him about this case. Not so?
Athi wena ke nabo sergeant nabo mnumzana bomkhulu abomabhena futhi nabanye ngesikhathi kade nibopha ke umsola ngomnyaka 2020 kade nimbopha mina iqala lasethembisa ke kade nibophile ngiqala leli kepha ngemuva ukuthi eboshiwe lapho ke bese namphinda ke ngemibuzo ke gcina selifika kule qala leli asinjalo.
And I'm not suggesting there is anything wrong about that.
Athi akasho ukuthi khona ke okungalungile ngokwenza lokho.
It's just the methodology.
So my lord, I'll start with the last part. The answer is correct, yes. He was arrested for the drug dealing case, and then in the background, we have done a cold case analysis insofar as this matter is concerned. That's the first part. So I agree with the last assertion, but I want to go to the first portion of Advocate Mnisi's statement.
Athi malana nephuzo yelo ke yebo kuyiqiniso kade bembopha malana iqala leli lasethembisa ke dayisa ke idakamiswa ke lapho ke kepha malana nephuzo lokuqala umile aqhamuke ngalokho yothi abuye aze kulona ke manje.
When we did that, my lord, I was given a mandate to investigate this case. So in other words, one was not sitting randomly and selecting or deciding that you will pursue suspects which you do not have a docket on. This docket was given to us, to me, to lead as the investigating officer. As part of the investigation, we obtained evidence that was pointing us to accused number 1. And it is on those bases that then the analysis, the methodology was then embarked on to focus on him, not in the absence of this docket. So this docket was the basis of what we were doing.
Athi yebo khona ke lapho kunjalo ke kepha ukhumule khona nje nathi umnumzana bamnika idocket leli ukuthi akaseshe noma ke enze uphenyo lakhe mayelana neqala leli ngesikhathi kade besenza lokho kade besenza ama-cool analysis lapho ke uma ebiza ngegama lesingisi-ke lapho ke ngesikhathi besenza lokho kula khona ke kade benolwazi lolo kade banikisa kumsola wokuqala.
Now in March 2019, my lord, I was still in possession of this docket as I've said to date. The members who appears there as the arresting officers in the Tembisa case were not part of my investigation team. They are local detectives, they are police officers, crime prevention and detectives from Tembisa. They were not part of the investigation prior to me being present. They are not part of the investigation team up to date. So they have no knowledge or relevance insofar as I know, insofar as this matter is concerned. It will then be peculiar because what questions do you put? And how do you dispute the answers when you are not sitting with the docket? Because if somebody answers you or you're building a case, you need to see if what is being collected is in line with your docket. So how will investigators pursue someone on a matter that I'm not sitting with the docket with, because in March 2019, I was in possession of the original docket, and I was the lead investigating officer, and I was not part of this interview or whatever that transpired in Tembisa, my lord.
Athi-ke lapho ngomnyaka kaMarch ngo-2019 kade aphethe-ke idokhethi leli licala leli kekena-ke ufakazi ngesikhathi kade aphethe idokhethi leli kekena-ke kade azama ukwenza-ke uphenyo lakhe noma useshe kwicala leli-ke kepha mayelana nodaba lwamaphoyisa lasethembisa-ke wona-ke athi akona-ke kunala bahlangana khona-ke mayelana necala leli-ke ngoba bona kade bephenya icala lasethembisa-ke lakamsolwa ngesikhathi kade eboshiwe khona lapho eboshiwe ukuthi watholakala-ke eneyidakamizwa kuyena-ke noma watholakala edayisa-ke iyidakamizwa kuyena-ke futhi athi kule dokhethi leli aliphethe lana-ke ngesikhathi amaphoyisa akade ekhulumisana nawo-ke akukho la abhala khona i-statement amnikeza mayelana ngomsolwa wokuqala kule dokhethi leli lalecala esingalo la ngaphambi kwenkantolo manje.
No, any of my members that I refer to, my lord, with the exception of Warantu Samakubo, because I'm being told he was there, although I can't confirm. But insofar as the team members that I'm aware of, none of them, including Warantu Samakubo, by the way, informed me that this man was arrested. There was a suspect arrested by the name of Sibia, and he participated in that interview. He didn't tell me that in the briefing when we were still talking together. I don't recall him saying there's a suspect arrested, and he interviewed as a suspect and decided or suggested that that particular suspect must be released.
Athi ngesikhathi bakhulumisana no-warrant officer Makubo akunala warrant officer Makubo wamtshela khona ukuthi kunomlisa uthizeni bamiza ukuthi usibiyake waboshwa-ke lapho-ke ngesikhathi eqeda kuboshwa khona bese bamphina-ke ngemibuzo-ke kepha uma bengatholi-ke ulwazi malana nalo muntu uma bengatholi ulwazi ukade uqhamuka kusibiyake lapho-ke bese wacabanga wathi yena-ke wasajesa ukuthi kumele ukuthi bamdedele akukho la wakhuluma khona-ke u-warrant officer Makubo kuyena-ke ufakazi.
Yes, my lord. That's how far I can take it at this stage.
Athi kula angaza khulume agcine khona-ke ngesikhathi samanje.
Thank you, Brigadier. The methodology. In 2019, March 2019, accused number 1, that's my analysis, gets arrested for something else, but he gets quizzed on the death of Meyiwa. And I'm not saying there is anything wrong in that. I'm just trying to draw an analogy on the methodologies that have been used. He gets arrested on something else, he gets quizzed on something else.
Athi-ke lapho ngenyanga kaMarch ngomnyaka 2019 umsolwa wokuqala uyaboshwa lapho eshola-ke icala elithizeni-ke ngesikhathi kade aboshwe icala elithizeni bese baqhamuka bambuza-ke imibuzo-ke mayelana necala lokushona kukaSenzo.
So, my lord, the methodology that is being explained to me by Advocate Mnisi, okay, let me talk about the cold case methodology. It doesn't work that way. Perhaps let me just put it, because perhaps there's a misunderstanding of how cold case analysis or the methodology, if I can use that term, works. How it works, my lord, you need to have the basis. You need to have a docket that you are pursuing, that is cold. In embarking to solve that matter, you then apply various methods of identifying parallel cases to the same target that you are pursuing. But there must be basis. So you can't just take a case random that has nothing to do with what you're investigating, and then because there won't be a connection. So there must be a basis. Like in this instance, there's a death of Meyiwa. The reason we apply this methodology is because we're trying to connect this suspect to this main charge. Now, that is now the death of Meyiwa. Insofar as the Tembisa matter, those investigators were not part of this case. So they could not have applied this method insofar as this matter before court is concerned, because they were not in possession of this investigation. They were not part of this investigation, so they could not bring anything to this matter. If they applied it, it was for something else, but definitely not this matter.
Athi-ke lapho-ke uma besenza kuphenyo lwabo-ke lapho-ke bagxinize ekutheni benze kuphenyo mayelana necala leli ababhekene nalo kusuke benalo ngaphambi kwabo-ke lapho-ke futhi eqhubeka wajobela washo khona njalo ukuthi mayelana necala leli-ke lapho khona-ke kula kade bezama ukuxhumanisa khona-ke umsolwa mayelana necala leli ngoba mhlawumbe amlethe kule cala leli mayelana nolwazi kade analo-ke ngesikhathi lesi bekaphenya-ke icala leli-ke noma mayelana nolwazi lolu kade alutholile ngesikhathi bekasenza ukusesha kwakhe kwicala leli futhi eqhubeka washo khona ukuthi amaphoyisa alapho kethembisa mayelana necala leli likamsolwa basethembisa-ke kade engekho kule cala leli esingalo la enkantolo futhi abanalo ulwazi mayelana nedokhethi lecala leli esinalo la phambi kwenkantolo manje.
Yes, my lord.
Thank you, Brigadier. Brigadier, is it not your evidence? Oh, I'm sorry. An indulgence, my lord.
Yeah, fine.
I'm sorry about that, my lord. Apparently this up and down movement is going to be it's going to occur very frequently. I may apologize in advance for
No,
that.
no,
my
no.
lord. Thank you.
I'm used to it. 2 years I've been watching it.
Yes, my lord. Unfortunately, now it's on my shoulders. Thank you, my lord. Now, Brigadier, before I forget this aspect, wasn't really part of your evidence that upon your appointment as investigating officers in this matter, you made copies of the dockets and gave other police who were also appointed as investigators in this matter, including Makuba.
Mnumzana manje umeli uthandwazi la kuwena ukuthi ngabe kade kungasi ubufakazi bakho lo wabukhuluma ukuthi ngesikhathi bukhethiwe njengomholi wabaseshi bicala leli la una-ke wenza lapho na kwenza amakhophi khona-ke bezowanikeza-ke amanye amaphuzu la kade usebenzisana nawo ekuthizeni bapheni icala noma kade usizana nabo ekuthizeni bapheni icala leli wakhuluma igama kamnumzana owarrant officer Makubo.
That is correct, my lord.
Right, yebo kuqiniso.
So why then do you say you were the only person who was in possession of the case docket? Other police people would not have known what was the content of this docket that related to the death of Senzo.
Manje bathi kungani ukuthi kuphela kade uphethe idokhethi leli lecala leli kepha-ke amanye amaphuzu kade engenalo ulwazi lokuthi ngabe yini equkethwe ngaphakathi kwedokhethi leli lokushona kukaSenzo.
No, I think my lord, perhaps I was misunderstood. I said, and that's why I said it's important for me to refer to Tembisa case 217, because that's what I can factually connect to the incident of March 2019. And I'm saying those members, the police officers in that case, which I can read in terms of the investigating officer, read their statements, the arresting officers, they were not part of this investigation team, and therefore they were not privy to this investigation. I'm referring to those police officers who were not involved, who were involved in Tembisa case 217 of 3/2019, because that is the incident I can talk to my lord, where I could see that in March, accused number 3, and it's the only incident in March where he was arrested and then later released. Those police officers did not have even the copies of this docket, but they were also not part of this investigation. So I'm saying on those basis, they could not have known what is contained in the docket.
Athi lapho-ke mhlawumbe ucocina awukaze umzwisise kahle-ke mmeli uma ngabe khuluma ngokuthi amaphoyisa kade engahambisani nabo nje noma kade amaphoyisa kade angekho ngaphansi kwethimba leli lokusesha kwicala leli. Ukhuluma ngamaphoyisa kade asesha icala sethembisa-ke lapho-ke ele case number 217/03/2019 lapho-ke athi amaphoyisa lawo-ke kade engekho ngaphansi kwethimba lakhe lokusesha icala leli esingalo la phambi kwenkantolo. Athi bona kade besesha icala lasethembisa-ke la umsolwa kade eqosa icala lokutholakala idakamizwa noma icala lokuthi bamthole idayisa idakamizwa lapho-ke futhi ngemuva kwalapho kulasele bamthethela khona-ke yena-ke ngoba kade bengatholi kama-statement we-212.
Yes, my lord, that's my answer.
Athi yebo iyona impendulo yakhe leyo.
Thank you, sir. But in your analysis and in your answer, why are you avoiding to include Makubo as a person who had a duplicate or who had information about this Senzo Meyiwa's case?
Wathi mina ngingaze kungani-ke uMakubo ungamfakile ngamasheke mayelana icala leli kade analo-ke noma nedokhethi leli kade analo-ke lokushona kukaSenzo Meyiwa.
Because, I'm sorry before you answer, because accused number 1 specifically mentioned that he was also a clerk.
Ngoba-ke umsolwa qala ukhulumile ukuthi kade akhona-ke lapho-ke kulokho.
My lord, excuse me, I dealt with the first part too. So Warrant Officer Makubo's name came up on the first assertion that was made by Advocate Mnisi when he said, do I confirm or am I changing from that evidence that I've made copies for the other investigators in this matter? That included Warrant Officer Makubo, and my answer was yes. Then I moved forward to say the members involved in the Tembisa case 217 of 3/2019 were not part of this investigation. They were not reporting to me. No, they were part of the investigation team that was before us. So based on those, based on that, my lord, I do not see then on what basis would they have had copies of the docket. That is the first part, my lord.
Athi-ke kuphuzu oqala-ke la umathanda ukuthi akhulumize nodaba olulandelayo ukuthi abaseshi noma abantu kade bekhona ngaphansi kwethimba lakhe besesha noma bephenya icala leli kade ebenzela amakhophi bese wabanikeza amakhophi edokhethi leli cala leli-ke kepha-ke ukhulume khona amaphoyisa lapha ethembisa-ke mayelana necala le-case 217/03 of 2020-ke bona kade bengenazo isandla noma kade bengalekeleli lutho mayelana necala leli eqhamuka phambi kwesenkantolo manje sibhekane nalo icala lokushona kukaSenzo Meyiwa futhi uyasho khona ukuthi bona kade behambisana nelinye iqembu lalapho kethembisa-ke ngesikhathi kade besenza uphenya kwicala labo-ke mayelana nomsolwa leli kade benalo lokuthi bathole umsolwa edayisa idakamizwa.
Secondly, my lord, I said I spoke to Warrant Officer Makubo because at that stage we were still communicating. Hence, I was able to inform them at the time about Zungu, in the initial stage, with Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi. At no stage did Warrant Officer Makubo informed me that he was called to an interview where accused 1 was involved, or rather was questioned. At no stage he made that assertion to me, my lord, or any of the team members of the team, my lord.
Athi khona-ke lapho kade akhulumisana futhi no-Lieutenant Warrant Officer Makubo kepha akaze amtsheleke futhi khona komunye ambizile ukuthi uLieutenant Colonel Buthelezi lapho-ke nabo akaze bamtshela ukuthi kade bekhulumisana nomsolwa uqala noma kade bemphenya-ke noma nemibuzo noma kade bembuza-ke imibuzo. Ngesikhathi leso-ke.
Yes, my lord, that's my response.
So that in short, you then saying that this allegation that accused number 1 is saying, or this information that is coming up from accused number 1, according to you, it could never have happened that way.
Manje athumeli ngabe usho ukuthi mayelana nolwazi oluqhamuka kumsolwa uqala usho ukuthi mayelana nenkulumo yakhe yonke-ke loo nto la ayikaze yabakhona noma ayikaze yenzeke.
My lord, I can confirm, as I've said, that he was arrested, but the arrest related to the drug dealing. So my response, my lord, it must not be misunderstood to be saying I was not present in so far as what happened in Tembisa. If the assertion is that there were certain discussions, I do not know. I was not part of that. I'm simply giving evidence on what I could put my hands on. And I'm saying the first part of Tembisa matter is the docket of Tembisa. In that docket, there is no reference of what is being put to me. That's the first part. The second part, insofar as this matter that is before court, which I was leading in March 2019, there is no information that was brought to me by any of the investigators that accused number one is a suspect and is being interviewed. On those bases, my lord, it would be difficult for me to say, yes, it happened. On what basis? I was not there. So if it happened, my lord, I wouldn't know. I was not there. But there's no evidence or basis that supports that narrative in both dockets, my lord.
Akila madoket omabili ke lapho ke na ke akukho la bamtshela khona ukuthi umsolo uqala ke abushiwe futhi ngesikhathi abushiwe naso ke bese lamaphoyisa campaigning ambuza ke imibuzo ke lapho ke bese babuya bamtshela ke ngenyanga kaMarch ngonyaka 2019 akakukho la laba basebenzisana nathi izinto baseshi cala leli noma baphinga cala leli babuya bamtshela ukuthi umsolo uqala kade abushiwe mayicala lasethembisa ke lapho ke leli kade abushelwe futhi babuya bakhuluma naye lapho ke akukho la yena ke ufakazi babuya bamtshela ngalokho ke.
Yes, that's my response, my lord.
Thank you, Brigadier. That sounds much better. The fact that you did not receive information from those who participated in this incident does not mean that this did not happen. Not so.
Nanoma kuukuthi nake mnumzana ukaze ke uthole ulwazi malanga namaphoyisa la kade ashizi nomsolo phansi imibuza ke imibuzo lokho akusho ukuthi lokho akaze kwenzeke
Because you're not there.
ngoba kade ungekho lapho ke.
I was not there, my lord. I think I've answered that. I don't know how far can I take it.
Just for my edification.
Yes.
Athi yebo ngangekho.
Is it possible? Oh, sorry.
Athi yebo lapho kade ngingekho futhi angazi ngaphendla ngithini ke manje.
General Leshabane was the most senior guy there. And that, there was a commissioner of police, obviously, above him.
There was, so General Shaban and General Sibia
Sibia,
is the DNC now.
Right.
Then, yes, they would have been in the same level.
Yeah.
Yes. But also General Sibia, at that time, what I know, my lord, he was not in the police. He was doing some other work in Johannesburg. So General Shaban, but they were in the same level, the level of Major General when General Sibia was there. But subsequent to that, he's now a Deputy National Commissioner. This is now General Sibia, currently.
So a general can interview a suspect called Ratamakhaching. There's no docket which is opened. There are no notes which are kept of the discussion or the interview or the interrogation. And yet you, as the colonel in charge of the investigation, you never got any notification.
That's why, my lord, I said I'm finding it very strange, particularly if you take into account the level of experience. General Sibia was the head of the Hawks in Gauteng.
Okay.
So he's a detective by nature. He's now the Deputy National Commissioner currently in the country. General Shabane was even though he was a cluster commander in the North Rand area, but he was a detective as well. And so that's why I'm saying how the narrative has been told to me, I can't take it further than that, my lord.
Kade kusenkanti ukuthi manje ke lapho kusho ukuthi umnumzana uGeneral Major General Sibia futhi no General Leshabane ke lapho ke ngabe kade khona ke omunye mhlawumbe kade anesikhundla esiphezulu esingaphezulu kunesomunye bese ufakazi waphila ngokuthi kade ikhundla zabo zilingana ke bona ke bobabili ke lapho ke futhi kasho ukuthi manje umnumzana omunye ukhona ke lapho ke sile ku Deputy National Commissioner lapho ke bese yade ubuza ukuthi manje lokho yena athi akakuthule kahle ukuthi lokho kungenzeka kade kwenzeke kanjani ngoba kade anganalo ulwazi lwenkulumo leyo.
As it please the court, madam. May I just respond to what the court wanted to inquire from the witness here? This witness just indicated that he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So if those are the questions that are mind-boggling in the mind of the court, for the court to get first-hand information on whether or not there were notes which were kept there, whether or not there were not notes, the very best person who can come and demystify the court on this kind of a mystery which is there is the person himself, not this witness.
No, fine.
Because he wasn't there.
No,
It will therefore be very improper to conclude this matter on the understanding that.
No, you're reading what I not.
Thank you, my lords.
I'm just the modus operandi.
Yes.
Like me here.
Yes.
The JP.
Yes.
The deputy JP.
Yes, my lord.
It goes with structures.
Yes.
They hold a meeting with Ratamakhaching.
Yes.
They don't keep any notes. There's no docket. That's what I want to understand. That's all. There's got nothing to do. It's just the protocol. Because somebody's being interrogated.
Yes.
After being assaulted. I don't know if you still remember that.
Yes.
He's assaulted.
Yes.
And then he's brought before a general.
Yes.
Shabani.
Yes.
And Sibia.
Yes.
And Makubu.
Yes.
And then nothing happens. They just say, let him go.
But as I'm saying, my lord, if the
Fine.
court is really interested in getting to know about the dynamics of what happened today, the most relevant people is not this witness,
Yeah,
because
no,
he wasn't there.
you're right.
It is those people who were
Fine,
there.
no problem.
I think Sibia is still alive, my lord. He's
No.
a Deputy National Commissioner. Lishabane, I think, is still alive.
Yeah, fine.
Yes. And they are readily available to come to court if the court
Yes,
is
the
given
late
instruction that they should come.
the late Mr. Ngomsolwa said he was going to call Chaban, if you recall. Maybe you've forgotten. I don't forget.
I was representing accused number 3.
Yeah, no, I'm just telling you.
I don't know if that
Mr.
was
Ngomsolwa
said
could
or
confirm that, and even Mr. Ramosipiti. Remember? Thank you.
Then
Let's make
Mnisi will
progress.
come, my lord. He will come.
make progress.
Yes. Now, that was just part of the methodology. Person gets arrested in one docket, they quiz him on something else. He gets arrested on the other docket, they quiz him on something else. And as I'm saying, there's nothing wrong with that. There's definitely nothing, there's nothing unlawful with that. But further to this, Mr. Sibia informs me that Zungu, when he testified here, he also expatiated about what could have happened at Tlorkop. I need to go and refresh my memory on this. Let us just put this fact in abeyance.
athi lapho-ke umuntu uyaboshwa bosha icala leli icala thizeni ngesikhathi ebosha icala thizeni lapho bambuza bampheka ngemibuzo enika icala thizeni bese bebamdedela kwicala thizeni kade bempheka ngalo imibuzo noma kade icala thizeni bembukele eboshelwe lona-ke futhi umnumzana usibi athi umnumzana kauzungu ngesikhathi kade la ngaphambi kwenkantolo ukuthi ufakazi bakhe kunkulunkulu udaba angalukhulumile kahle ngeke eqondile.
My Lord, so there are two responses to that. So the first part of Zungu, I was not here when he testified, so I won't be able to assist, even when that evidence is found on record. So that's the first part.
athi kunamaphuzu amabili ke abakhulume ngawo lana udaba lophuzu oqala lakamnumzana ke uzungu ngeke akhona ukukhuluma mayelana nalo ngoba ngesikhathi umnumzana uzungu kade letha ufakazi bakhe ngaphambi kwenkantolo ke yena-ke ufakazi wamanje kade angekho ke lapho-ke futhi namodaba lo kade likhona lapho ngaphambi kwesenkantolo beshicilele phansi angeke akhona ukuthi aphefumule mayelana nalo.
The second part, my Lord, the methodology, I think is misunderstood. You need to have the main docket. That's how it works. So you need to have a docket that is a dilemma that is difficult to resolve. Then once you have that docket, the second thing, you need to have sight of the targets. Your suspects must be on site, the person that you want to pursue. And once you have that person on site, in the absence of evidence at that stage, then you apply the methodology of identifying other cases that can bring this person closer. But there must be a base, there must be a docket that is difficult to connect, or rather that is unsolved, and because of the lack of evidence at the time, we are not able to arrest the suspect, in other words, the target of the suspect. If the evidence is sufficient, you go straight to the suspect. You don't have to go around applying the methodology. But if there is difficulty, then you will apply the cold case analysis of identifying other cases. While you are addressing this person on the other cases, then you are looking into the main docket. So there must be a main docket. And my problem, when I said perhaps the understanding is not correct, my Lord, is that the members of Tembisa who dealt with Tembisa case 217 of 2019 were not in possession, because even Warren Tembisa Makobo, when he was called there, if he was called, he was not part of those members. So those members could not have been in possession of these dockets. Only the investigators, as I've said, my Lord, was in possession of the original. Members of the team were in possession of the copies. Then the team members can then apply this method because they know what we are looking for in relation to evidence that we have, not when you don't have any docket that you need to solve, my Lord.
uphendulile ufakazi ngale ndlela ke landelayo athi esikhathini esiningi-ke uma ngabe uyayibona bephethe i-main docket idocket elikhulu idocket elikhethekile-ke lapho-ke kulaba abheka khona-ke kumahlangothi-ke amaningi thizeni lo muntu othizeni abasuke bacingana naye ukuthi bangamthola kanjani-ke lapho-ke kulaba aplaya khona-ke le method akhulume ngayo ilimi lesingisi elijulile-ke lapho-ke athi ngesikhathi besenza lokho-ke kulaba azama ukuxhumana khona-ke ukuxhumanisa khona kwenye amacala-ke amaningi-ke la angaze agcine-ke amacala amaningi angaze agcine abaletheke kulo muntu othizeni osuke bacingana naye thizeni bamthole esikhathini esiningi-ke athi lapho-ke uyavuka ukuthi yebo abaqembu lezokusesha lakhe laba abakade asebenzisana nabo kade ebenzele amakhophi bese abanikeza-ke amakhophi wedocket leli esinalo la ngaphambi kwenkantolo. Kepha ukuthi yini yaqhamuka ngesikhathi amaphoyisa aseThembisa-ke phenya icala laseThembisa-ke athi akanalo ulwazi lokho-ke ngoba amaphoyisa aseThembisa kade engenalo idocket leli esinalo la ngaphambi kwenkantolo futhi amaphoyisa aseThembisa kade engazi ukuthi yini equkethiwe noma ekhona noma yini engekho ngaphakathi kwedocket leli esinalo la ngaphambi kwenkantolo nokuthi uma ngabe uwarrant officer Makhubu wahamba wayeThembisa-ke lapho-ke bese wakhuluma namaphoyisa aseThembisa yena uthi akanalo ulwazi lokho nokuthi yini wakho bakhuluma ngayo nokuthi yini abangakaze bakhulume ngayo.
And lastly, my Lord, if a suspect is pursued, interviewed or questioned for this matter, for example, record, even if it's done by part of the team members, they will have to have some form of communication, maybe arrest, a statement, and the reason why the person was released or eliminated in the case. So there must be a record on the main docket that Mr. So was pursued, this investigation was done and could not be connected on the matter. Even if it's released at the station for that matter, to say, based on this reason, the person is then released or could not be connected into this matter, if things are done in relation to the matter that is before court. And I'm saying, my Lord, there is no such in this docket that indicates that accused number 1 was arrested for this particular matter, or things were questioned, there are questions were put to him about this matter by those officers who have done it, or even their statements on that matter, my Lord. There isn't one here. There isn't one also in the Tembisa docket.
Athi-ke lapho kuma ngaba amaphoyisa kade akhuluma khona-ke ngomsolwa oqala mayelana necala leli esibhekene nalo mqaleni umsolwa oqala phambili ngalo ngaphambi kwenkosi enkantolo kumanje noma ekhathini samanje-ke lapho-ke amaphoyisa kade ekhona-ke lapho-ke bezobhala istatement sokuboshwa kwakhe-ke futhi nesizathu sokuthi bamdedele futhi nala kade bemubuza khona-ke imibuzo-ke bekuyoqhamuka ngaphakathi noma kade noma lokho bekuzoba khona ngaphakathi kwedocket leli esinalo la ngaphambi kwenkosi enkantolo ngoba athi uma ngabe bheka ama-statement akhona la ngaphakathi kwedocket leli akukho la kubhalwe khona-ke mayelana nodaba lolo.
Yes, my Lord, that's my response.
Brigadier Kinini, you know, I'm standing here, I'm wondering if you're really listening to yourself, and I'm saying this with due respect. Now, if you say there is nothing in the docket that they were investigating that Tembisa case 2173 of 2019 to demonstrate that they had an interview with accused number 1, are you suggesting, Brigadier, that in the docket, on the strength of which accused number 1 was arrested, that drug-related issue docket, is there anything, if we're to get into that docket, that we're going to find that accused number 1 was also interviewed in relation to this matter?
Manje athi umela akazi ukuthi mnumzana uma ngabe ukhuluma kade uzizwa noma kade uzilalele na usho ukuthi ngesikhathi umsolwa kade bushiwe lapha manje icala laseThembisa udayisa idakamizwa noma lotholakala ke idakamizwa kena-ke usho ukuthi uma ngabe sesingahamba siphinge idocket lelo bese silithole uma sibheke idocket lelo-ke usho ukuthi akunala ababhalile khona ukuthi umsolwa kade bemphenya ke imibuzo kade bembuza ke imibuzo mayelana icala leli.
My Lord, perhaps I was misunderstood. I'm saying in the Tembisa docket, the charge there is drug dealing.
athi ke mhlawumbe kade bengamzwile kahle uthi lapho mina ngicela sethembisa ke umsolwa waboshelwa utholakala ke enedakamiswa noma watholakala idayisa idakamiswa.
And I'm saying in that docket, there is no indication that accused number 1 was arrested for this matter or questioned about the death of Senzo Meyiwa. And I'm referring to that particular docket, my lord. There is no such statement or any assertion in that docket. The charges are ones related to drug dealing all the way up to the time when the evidence was laid and concluded in Tembisa Court.
Athi ku docket lasethembisa ke akukho lapha bhalile khona ke ukuthi umsolwa kade bembuza ke imibuzo mayelana nokushona kukaSenzo Meyiwa. Kepha okhona oqukethwe ngaphakathi kwedocket lasethembisa ke case 217/03/2017 kula khona ke umsolwa ke vela phambi kwenkantolo noma kade kusecala lokudayisa idakamiswa noma lokutholakala ke nedakamiswa ngesikhathi kuqala ukwenza ukusashicala lelo ke laze vela phambi kwenkantolo baze baqeda ke senkantolo akukho lapha khona ke ukuthi yena ke bambuza ke imibuzo mayelana nokushona kukaSenzo Meyiwa.
And I'm saying, my lord, secondly to this docket, which is relevant to the death of Senzo Meyiwa, there is no statement, be it from Warrant Officer Makubo, or any other police officer, that suggests that accused number 1 was once a suspect prior to us approaching him prior to us having sight on him, and then subsequently arrested on the 30th of May 2020. That he was once questioned or taken in as a suspect in March 2019. There is silent. So you don't find his name in this docket, which should have been the docket that talks to his presence, because then it means he would have been interviewed or pursued for this matter. And I'm saying there's no such statement that indicates that he was once a person of interest.
Athi futhi mina nedocket leli elikhona lapha phambi kwenkosi enkantolo ke docket elikala leli sibhekana nalo ke lokushona kukaSenzo Meyiwa athi akukho la abaphoyisa abhale khona ke mhlawumbe Warrant Officer Makubo watshela amanye ababhala phansi kwestatement ukuthi ke umsolwa kade eboshiwe futhi ngesikhathi bekaboshwe ngaso ke mina ngicala lezi kade eboshiwe ngaso sithembisa kukhona ke isikhathi bambuza kade bemphenya ngemibuzo noma kade bembuza ke imibuzo mayelana nokushona kukaSenzo Meyiwa athi noma yiliphi iphoyisa ekade likhona ngaphansi kwethimba lakhe ke akukho la bakhulume khona ke ngokuthi umsolwa uqala kade ebuzwa ke imibuzo mayelana nokushona kukaSenzo Meyiwa.
Lastly, my lord, as I've said, and that should not be misunderstood, I've said I was not there when he was arrested in 2019. I'm simply commenting on what is before me. If you make a session to say certain discussions went that way, I was not there. But I'm saying both dockets don't tell me that he was arrested for the death of Senzo Meyiwa, my lord. The docket speaks for themselves.
Athi futhi kodwa ke yena ukukhuluma ngento ke anayo la ke yena esandleni sakhe noma kayiphethe phambi kwakhe akukho la kubhalwe khona ukuthi yena kade emphenya imibuzo ngesikhathi kabushiwe mayelana ngicala leli kaSenzo Meyiwa.
That's my response, my lord.
Athi impendulo yakhe ke leyo.
I've said, Brigadier, we will park that issue relating to what could have happened at Lordkop until I confirm what is contained in the record on the basis of what the witnesses who testified about Lordkop said.
Athi kwamanje kusuke siningancane ngibala nodaba lwala lapha ke Kerkop size sithola athophule kufakazi kade bukhona ngaphambi kwenkantolo ufakazi ukuthi abanye ke ufakazi mana nendaba yase Lordkop.
I understand, my lord.
Athi yebo ngiyakuzwa.
My lord, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
It's 11:39.
Yeah. Let's adjourn.
I'm not suggesting an adjournment, my lord,
What is
because in
suggesting?
any event, I would have requested that we have an early adjournment today to enable me to go and verify the information that is subsequently come up here that I said we are going to put in abeyance. I would have suggested that we adjourn at 1 o'clock for the day to go and go through that information.
Which information is that, Mr. Mnisi?
It relates to the evidence of Zungu. It could not only be Zungu, it relates to the testimony of the witnesses who testified about what could have happened at Lordkop. I think,
We got that information.
yes, it's there.
Mr. Mbarui can give you. I can tell you what was said.
I need to go verify.
Were there two meetings at Dorko?
I'm not sure.
We verify that because the evidence we have here
Yes.
is about one meeting. Am I correct, Mr. Mbarui?
Yes, indeed, my lord.
One meeting.
Let me see me.
And we've got the
Proceedings of March
dramis
2024.
dramatis personae of that meeting. Who was there? How it came about? It's on evidence there. So, Mr. Balui and Mr. Ramusipiri can help you. Even Mr. Numal. Do you recall that meeting? At
I'll have to go
Dorko?
through the records.
Hello?
I'll have to go through the records.
Okay, fine. So how long should I adjourn?
I was suggesting, because I was saying, I'm not suggesting for an adjournment now. I'm not so sure if my colleagues will be compatible with the fact that we go through up until lunchtime and then we take the adjournment at lunchtime.
Okay, let's do it for 15 minutes. then.
Thank you, Madam.
Yes, Mr. Mnisi.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Brigadier. Now, accused number 1 gets arrested on the strength of a warrant of arrest in relation to the drug matter. Subsequent thereto, the questions that are put to him relating to this matter, and then he saying things which, according to the police, are very relevant, and then the process of the confessions and the pointing out, then thereafter followed. Not so.
Bathi umsolwa uqala ke waboshwa ngemuva kokuthi ekhishwe incwadi ukuthi yena kaboshwe kamaphoyisa mayelana nodaba lwecala lakhe lokudayisa idakamizwa noma lokutholakala kwedakamizwa. Ngesikhathi ke aboshiwe lapho ke bese wathathwa ke lapho kubuza imibuzo ke bese ngemuva kwalokho begcina bemenza ke confession bese wahamba wayokhomba ke. Athi njalo?
It is so, my lord.
Athi yebo kunjalo.
So my following of the events up to that far, they are still correct.
Ukuthi indlela ngitshela ngayo mayelana nezinto noma nendlela izinto ezenzeka ngayo besho iqiniso.
Yes, but with the exception of the event of the 31st, and that relates to the wish of the traditional healer, Mr. Swane. So it's the questioning on the 30th of May.
Yes.
31st, the pointing out to Mr. Zwane and previously that interview, and then subsequent to that, then the formal interview, the pointing out of the 5th of June. Yes, so that is the correct statement.
Thank you.
athi yebo khona-ke kunjalo-ke malana namalanga lawo ke langa lange-30 langa lange-31 zakaMeyi futhi langa lange-5 zakaJuni la kade ekhonjwa khona-ke.
Now, after the pointing out, which happened on the 5th, the state, when I say the state now, I'm referring to the side of the police. The police were then able to form a reasonable suspicion on the content of the information on the confession, and pointing out the state then formed a reasonable suspicion that indeed, yeah, definitely accused number 1 has got a case to answer in relation to the death of Senzo Meyiwa.
Usuthi ngemuva kwelanga lange-5 ngemuva thina-ke enze i-confession bese futhi kwakade confession kade khona-ke futhi nawakhonjwa khona-ke lapho-ke futhi shuthi amaphoyisa abaney'nsolo ezibalethela ukuthi yena-ke unecala emaphapheni lokuluma mayelana nokushona kukaSenzo Meyiwa.
That suspicion, I believe, my lord, was there, but it was not the end. As I've said earlier, we needed to follow up things that I mentioned, which we did on the confession, to corroborate it. But also then there were other investigations in the very same matter where witnesses in the hostel and different places were then interviewed and subsequently statements taken. So there was a whole lot of investigation taking place around this period of the confession. It was not just the confession and the pointing out. There were other investigations in support of the confession and where there's contradiction, where we discovered that this is not accurate, my lord.
athi yebo khona-ke kunjalo-ke ngemuva kwakade khona i-confession kade khona-ke futhi nolwazi kade benalo-ke futhi nolwazi lofakazi kade benalo-ke mayelana nodaba lama-statement athathiwe kuba kufakazi basehostele futhi nakwanye kofakazi athi yebo kunjalo-ke basala-ke emuva-ke umhlala lokho noma ulwazi lolo kade benalo-ke.
Yes, my lord. But also the other part is that, as I've said also previously, that it was in conjunction with the NPA, because there was that at that stage it was a procedural-driven investigation, so we'll then share notes and follow up on certain things as well.
athi lapho-ke kade besebenzisana nhlangothi lwabeshushisi ngesikhathi kade besenza lolu cwaningo lwabo noma lokusesha kwabo-ke lapho-ke la kade beqhudelana khona mayelana nolwazi kade benalo-ke.
Yes, my lord. That's my lord.
Thank you. So if I were to capture what you've just said now, is that subsequent to the making of the confession and the pointing out by accused number 1, you had to go and find some corroboration with regard to what was contained in the confession, and that you did in conjunction with the directives or the assistance by the prosecutors from the DPP.
But usho ukuthi ngemuva kwakade khona i-confession kade khona-ke lapho futhi nokukhonjwa kakhe ngomsolwa wokuqala shutho lapho kade besebenzisana khona-ke nohlangothi lwabeshushisi ngenhloso ukuthi nina-ke nithole lokho nakuthola.
So, my lord, so what I'm saying is that in the midst of that investigation, so subsequent to the confession, there were other investigations pertaining this matter that was embarked upon. And in embarking in that process, such was discussed with the NPA as they were part of the investigation. But not necessarily to say in the confession they said this and this. It was a vast investigation. But obviously, as you collect and you seek guidance, you will then communicate with the prosecution, and then you will get guidance, and then you will follow up. But it was not one isolated. As we're embarking or looking at accused number 1, we're also looking at accused number 2 at the time in terms of the cold case analysis. So it was vast. But insofar as accused one is concerned, it was the things that we mentioned in the confessions that we're following up and trying to collaborate, the DNA, for example, the analysis, etc.
athi lapho kade besenza ukusesha kuqala mayelana nodaba oluningi-ke lapho-ke futhi bavame ukuthi bahlale phansi nohlangothi lwabeshushisi la kade bekhuluma khona-ke futhi bephanakezeluleke noma mhlawumbe ingcebiso zokuthi kumele benze kanjani noma mhlawumbe amagama ukuthi kumele besebenze kanjani mayicala leli-ke ngoba kade bengasebenzi bodwana kuphela futhi ngemuva kwekudaba lwe-confession futhi nodaba lokuthi kade khonjwe khona-ke lapho-ke bona bezama ukuxhumanisa kufakazi babo okade bephethe mayelana nomsolwa wokuqala futhi nomsolwa wesibili mayelana namacala la kade benawo-ke babiza ukuthi ama-cold case ngolimi lwesingisi.
Yes, my lord.
But yeah, in essence, what I'm saying is the information that was contained in the confession by accused number 1 and the information that was in the pointing out or the pointing out itself basically served as a springboard to widen the scope of investigation, and which is the reason why then we had to go and search for other information just to confirm if what is contained in the confession is what should have been.
bazathi usho ukuthi udaba lwe-confession noma ulwazi ade likhona ngaphakathi kwe-confession futhi nodaba lokuthi ade khonjiwe khona lapho umsolwa wokuqala-ke ilona eladonsa-ke uphenya licaleni lapho wona kade wahamba khona-ke bese wenza isiqiniseko sokuthi ngempeleni nangiqiniso lokhu okukhulunywa kule confession kuyahambisana nalokhu kade kusesha noma kade uphenya.
That is correct, my lord.
athi yebo kuyiqiniso.
Thank you, sir. Now, accused number 1 gets arrested on the 30th. On the 1st, he allegedly makes a confession before Colonel Mboto, and then on the 5th, he makes allegedly pointing out before Colonel Khadebe.
bathi-ke baboshwa kumsolwa ngelanga lange-31 bese lapho kwe-confession ngelanga lokuqala-ke eyenza ucolonel Mboto ke bese ngelanga lange-5 wahamba ukhomba-ke lapho bekhonjiswa the name of the officer council?
Khadebe.
Constable,
not constable. I think it should be Colonel Khadebe.
bathi mhlawumbe lapho-ke isilungiso lapho-ke cathi mhlawumbe ucolonel Khadebe.
So the date, my lord, maybe to put them in the correct context.
Yes.
Context. The confession was made on the 31st, on the 30th of May 2020.
Asilungise lapho-ke i-confession bayenza ngelanga lange-30 ngoMeyi ngomnyaka 2020.
On the 1st of June 2020, he made a first appearance in Tembisa Court insofar as the appearance is relating to the drug dealing matter. That is now the events of the 1st of June 2020.
Athi ngelanga lokuqala waqhamuka ngaphambi kwenkantolo yaseThembisa-ke lapho-ke mayelana necala lakhe lokudayisa idakamizwa noma lokutholakala enedakamizwa.
Yes, and the confession that was made on the 30th, my lord, 30, is the one that was made to Colonel Mboto.
Bathi i-confession kawayenza-ke ngelanga lange-30 le ayenza-ke ayenziswa kumnumzana uColonel Mboto.
And then the first, as I said, is court appearance. No events took place insofar as the confession is concerned. And then the formal pointing out was then done on the 5th by Colonel Khatebe, correctly so, my lord.
Bathi ngelanga lokuqala kunyaka kaJune ngomnyaka 2020 la kaqala khona kuvela ngaphambi kwenkantolo yaseThembisa necala lakhe kadabukane nalo-ke leli kade bemethele enkantolo licala lidayisa idakamizwa noma lokutholakala enedakamizwa kulona-ke futhi lapho kumnumzana Constable Khatebe la kade ehambe naye Kenneth Khatebe ngelanga lange-5 zakaJune kula kade ekhomba khona-ke.
Yes, that's. I just wanted to assist on the first, on the date of the first.
No, I do admit. I said on the first. That's when the confession was made. It was actually on the 30th.
Yes,
Correct.
yes, correct.
Now, between the period of the 5th, which is the day on which accused number 1 made his pointing out to, or in the presence of Colonel Khatebe, and the date on which accused number 2 was arrested, which is the 16th of July, 16th June 2020. Is there anything of importance that you can bring to the attention of this court as it relates to accused number 1?
Bathi ngemuva kwelanga lange-5 zakaJune la kade ekhomba khona-ke umsolwa wokuqala futhi uzofinca kwelanga lange-16 ngenyanga kaJune ngesikhathi kusha umsolwa wesibili-ke lapho-ke ngabe khona yini into ongathanda ukuthi uyilethe ngaphambi kwenkusenkantolo mayelana nodaba lwabo bobabili
In relation specifically to accused number 1,
mayelana nodaba likaMsolwa wokuqala oqondile
on the context of investigation.
mayelana nokuphenya kwecala.
Yes.
Yeah, my lord, it will be difficult to answer that question from the top of my head because I will need now to go through the docket to see, for example, what transpired from the 5th. If we interviewed someone, what statements, which is possible that we could have done that, what investigation. So I will have to really rely on the docket to be specific. I can't say from the top of my head.
Athi ekusizeni aphendule mayelana nalo mbuzo lokho ngendlela eqondile noma ngendlela ekhethekile kumele ukuthi yena-ke ahambe ayofunda-ke idokethi abuke ukuthi mhlawumbe ngabe yini ekhona-ke ngaphakathi kwedokethi yasho khona ukuthi mhlawumbe-ke kungatholakala ukuthi khona mhlawumbe ukusesha kwecala kade bekwenza lapho ngokuphenya kwecala-ke la basika khona-ke ama-statement wabantu abathize.
What I can say, although I'm not, and that's why I said, because I'm obvious I need to answer between the 5th and the 16th, my lord. I do know that investigation took place insofar as whatever we're doing related to the investigation or the corroboration that we wanted to get around accused number 1.
Yes.
What I'm not setting off is whether it falls within these 2 dates of the 5th and the 16th or after. So that's why I'm saying if I have to be specific, then one will have to look at the docket to see the specific dates, my lord.
Athi uyazi ukuthi phakathi qhamuka kwelanga le-5 zakaJune ngomnyaka 2020 kuze kufinye ngelanga le-16 ngenyanga kaJune ngomnyaka 2020 wona kade bematasatasa kusenza ukuthi ubephenya icala leli-ke kepha yasho khona ukuthi uthizeni aphendule ngamashina lombuzo wakade ubuziwe lapho-ke uzomele ukuthi bamvumele isikhathi esanele sokuthi ahambe kubuka idokethi lakhe-ke abuke ukuthi mhlawumbe ngabe yini ekhona ngaphakathi kwedokethi mayelana nomsolwa wokuqala phakathi kwesikhathi leso umeli ambuza ngaso.
Yeah, I can agree with you with that. Yeah, it's very massive, but I'd really appreciate if you can take the time to go and just go through your documents so that as we go forward, we don't find ourselves in a situation where we say, no, but I remember, I can now remember, I remember this is what happened, stuff like that, you understand?
Athi angakuthokozela ukuthi wena kuhambe mnumzana bese ubuke idokethi le bese ulifunde kahle ukuthi ukuthi ngabe yini enzeka lapho-ke ngoba athi akafundi isithule singaphansi kwesimo lezi kodwa usakhumbula kepha ukhumbula isikhathi sesigcwele.
I do understand, my lord.
Thank you, sir.
Athi yebo ngiyakuzwa.
Now, fast forward, 16 June 2020, accused number 2 gets arrested. There's a whole lot of investigation that happens around him, which culminated to, and that is on record, which culminated to a confession being made before, I think, a magistrate, Kronje, and Colonel Rapad also. It's just a very brief summary in relation to accused number 2.
Bathi ngokunciphile-ke ngemuva ngelanga lange-16 zakaJune ngomnyaka 2020 umsolwa wesibili-ke waboshwa-ke lapho-ke ngemuva ukuthi wena-ke bushiwe kade senza ukuphenya icala noma kade ngiphenya icala leli-ke bese ngesikhathi benisaphenya icala leli bese yena-ke wabuya i-confession ngaphambi komagistrate uKronje noColonel Oraphane.
Yes, that is correct, but the sequence of the confession, my lord, the first one on the 19th of June was made to Colonel Rapadio, and then on the 24th of June 2020, then to Magistrate Kronje, my lord.
Athi
On the
yebo
24th.
athi yebo kunjalo-ke i-confession yokuqala wayenza ngelanga lange-19 phambi koColonel Raphadi bese-ke nge-24 wezi-confession isibili-ke lapho yenza phambi komantshi Magistrate Raphane
No,
Kronje.
Thank you for that. And subsequent to that is after the 2 documents or the 2 incidents happened, then the investigation then had to proceed just to try and corroborate the information that you receive and try to get other information and stuff like that, up until such time that the docket was again put before the doors or the shores of the offices of the NPA for a decision and so. That's just in summary.
athi njengokunciphile ngemuva ukuthi-ke kwenzeka le gameko zenzeka zama-confession mayelana nomsolo wokuqala futhi nomsolo wesibili-ke lapho-ke ngesikhathi esikade niseniphenya ke icala leli noma senza kusasha kwecala leli-ke kulana khona idokhethi bese nanikisa-ke lapho-ke kuma-ofisi ase-NPA ekuthizeni imali ethekisa isinqumo mayelana nodaba lolu lwedokhethi.
It is so, my lord.
athi yebo kunjalo.
Now, as I went through the documents, I realized that there were two offices of the DPP that were involved here. That's now DPP Johannesburg and the office of the DPP Pretoria. Now, firstly, which DPP was approached for the first time after you had assembled this information and presented to a DPP for a decision probably?
bathi-ke manje siyabona ukuthi ngaphakathi kwedokhethi leli kunama-ofisi amabili we-DPP National Prosecuting Authority lapho-ke ihhovisi laseGoli futhi ihhovisi la Pretoria. Manje umuzi ukuthi ngesikhathi boqeda ukuthola kulwazi lwaduna mayelana nedokhethi leli-ke ngabe wahamba wayokuliphi ihhovisi labeshushisi ethizeni kutholeke isinqumo sabo?
It was the Pretoria, my lord, the Pretoria DPP. And my recollection of when we started engaging DPP Pretoria, Advocate Baloyi and other advocates, we directed to go there. I think it would have been early 2019, if not somewhere in December. So, but when the matter started, when we were appointed, at that stage, this docket was under the DPP Johannesburg. We then subsequently then advised that then it's been moved to Pretoria. And that is why there was this meeting of the 26th of January that I testified about 2019, where Brigadier Perumal, myself, went to see Advocate Baloyi with Advocate Leonard and I think Advocate Mahwati and where the other members were. That was, at least I can paste that date to the 26th of January 2019. So going downwards, up to the time when the docket was presented for a decision, it was only Pretoria DPP that we're dealing with, my lord.
athi-ke ekuqaleni idokhethi lathi lelahamba laba ngaphansi kwama-ofisi asegoli-ke bese ngesikhathi behamba bona bebuza-ke mayelana nalo-ke bese abantu babatshela ukuthi idokhethi leli sebelihambisile-ke balethe kuma-ofisi ase-Pretoria we-DPP office futhi ihhovisi labeshushisi la e-Pretoria-ke athi kuyakhumbula kahle ukuthi lapho kade kusekupheni komnyaka ka-2019 uma cabanga kahle mhlawumbe kade kuyinyanga kaNovemba noma uDisemba ngomnyaka ka-2019 ngesikhathi kade senzeka lokho-ke bese-ke ngelanga lange-26 ngelanga lange-26 kaJanuwari ngomnyaka ka-2019 right?
No. I said the docket was given to us in November 2018.
Okay.
And then we met the DPP well, I was in the DPP's office in Pretoria on the 26th of January 2019. And that has been the case up to the time the docket was presented for decision. And such was taken.
athi-ke silungisa lapho-ke ngesikhathi idokhethi leli walungisa lapho ngomnyaka ka-2018 kepha-ke waya lapho kuma-ofisi ase-DPP kuma-ofisi labeshushisi-ke ngelanga lange-26 ngenyanga kaJanuwari ngomnyaka ka-2019 la kade hamba khona-ke nomnumzana uPeruman futhi nabanye-ke ngesikhathi bahlangana nomnumzana Advocate Baloyi lapho-ke futhi nabanye asebenza nabo-ke lapho ngaphansi kuhhovisi labeshushisi balapho ePretoria ngesikhathi bethola khona isinqumo salecala leli noma sedokhethi leli.
Thank you. So at all material times, when you're saying this was a prosecutor-driven investigation, you're referring to the staff of the DPP at Pretoria.
bathi usho ukuthi ngesikhathi uthi idokhethi kade ngaphansi kwabashushisi besenza ucwaningo lawo njengoba besenza ushasha kwabo-ke shuthi kade lingaphansi kwehhovisi labeshushisi bala ePretoria.
So I'm referring to both, my lord. Even in Johannesburg, when we were introduced, there were various advocates that were introduced. Advocate Dutoit, I know one person was leading. There was Advocate Market. I just forgot the third advocate when we were initially appointed to lead this matter. But insofar as these accused were concerned, they were not relevant at the time because there was no site in terms of pursuing them. When evidence came up that connects these accused, the matter was now sitting at the DPP in Pretoria, and that was the case up to the time the matter was enrolled, my lord.
athi-ke esikhathini saqala noma ekuqaleni ngesikhathi bengenabo abasolwa ngaphansi kwedokhethi leli kade idokhethi lingaphansi kwehhovisi laseGoli labeshushisi lapho kuyakhumbula kahle ukuthi khona-ke u-Advocate Dutoit futhi nabanye-ke kepha ngemuva kwathuleke ulwazi lwabaluthola-ke mayelana nabasolwa bakhona ngecala leli idokhethi lelo balimikisa balithatha lapha eGoli bese baliletha ngapha abashushisi bangapha-ke Advocate Baloyi laba kade akhulume ngapha.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now I follow. In essence, 2018, when you received the case docket in November, you were assisted by the office of the DPP in Johannesburg. But when information started to filter in, then the docket was then moved to the office of the DPP in Pretoria. Is that what you're saying?
athi ngabe lokho ukuthi ngesikhathi bona idokhethi ngonyaka 2018 ngoNovember kade usizwa-ke nomolekelelo kabashushisi abakhulu baseGoli bese ngemuva thuleke ulwazi lo walithola-ke idokhethi leli belingaphansi kwehhovisi labashushisi lasePretoria.
No, it's not what I'm saying, my lord. What I'm saying is the docket get assigned to us on the 12th specific of November 2018. Just a month later, because between January and November to January 2019, it's only 1 month, it's the month of December. On the 26th of January 2019, I found myself with Brigadier Perumal at the DPP of Pretoria. So in that space, in other words, from the 12th of November when we signed for the docket, then there was a directive given by the NDPP that the matter must be removed from Johannesburg to Pretoria. At that stage, there was no evidence or information pointing to any of these accused. Even in that meeting that we had on the 26th of January 2019, my lord, there was no discussion relating to this accused. It was basically the dissection of what allegations, what does the docket tell us in light of these two conflicting allegations of saying there were no people who came in, and what are we pursuing. Brigadier Perumal was there and leading that discussion, my lord. So by the time we met the DPP for the first time on the 26th of January 2020, there was no information insofar as these accused are concerned. There was information that we're following, which took us nowhere, but insofar as all the 5 accused, at that time, there was no such information, my lord.
athi-ke lapho-ke idokhethi wathola-ke ngelanga lange-12 nyanga kaNovember ngonyaka 2018 ngesikhathi idokhethi kade ngenalutho olukhuluma khona-ke phakathi edocket malana nabasolwa laba ubahlanu ngesikhathi athole idocket leli bese ngethwini langa nge-26 ngesikhathi kade lapho kuyisikhathi lesi kade bamtshela ngalo ukuthi idocket sele baltransferile from lapho egovisi laseGoli ukuthi letha ngapha kumofisi lasePretoria la beshushisi khona-ke lapho-ke athukula behamba khona-ke nodokotela Perumani ngesikhathi kade yakhona-ke ngelanga lange-26 kumhlangano wabo-ke kade benawo-ke futhi abashushisi abakhulu abakhona ngalapho belovisi abashushisa nake-Pretoria kanti futhi ngesikhathi kade kusenzeka lokho-ke kade bengenalo ulwazi kade benalo mayelana nabasolwa bonkana abaqhamuka phambi kwenkantolo kepha kade bethola nje ulwazi oluthizeni mhlawumbe ulwazi oluthizeni ngesikhathi kade besala bemuva ulwazi lolo-ke kade kungekho la kade bekhuluma ngabasolwa abaqhamuka phambi kwenkantolo kumanje.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now, subsequent to the arrest of accused number 1 and accused number 2, and a certain light at the end of the tunnel started to beam. That's when then you formulated a viewpoint that indeed there was a breakthrough now, because at least we have got something tangible. I just want to understand myself in that context.
Athi ngabe kusisa yini ukuthi ngemuva ukuthi kutholakale noma kuboshwe kumsolwa oqala futhi umsolwa wesibili-ke kulane nana athola kukhanya ngoba athola khona-ke uyebokhanya malana ukuhamba kwenu bheka phambili ngesikhathi niphenisesha icala leli.
I can agree, my lord, to say we had evidence that connected obviously at that time accused number 1 and 2, but there was a lot of investigation that needed to be followed, and particularly that was now imminent, partly on the confession of accused 1 and then subsequently in great length on the confession of accused number 2, my lord.
Athi yebo angahambisana nenkulumo yakho ke-mail uma ukukhuluma lokho-ke kepha-ke lokho kwaqhamuka ngemuva ukuthi kona-ke bekade besenza kusesha kuqala noma kade bephinde kuqala leli futhi kwaqhamuka kudaba lwe-confession eyenziwe ngomsolwa wokuqala futhi nomsolwa wesibili.
Thank you, Brigadier. Would I be correct, Brigadier, that subsequent to the arrest of accused number 1 and the alleged confession and pointing out that he made, and the arrest of accused number 2 and the alleged confessions that he made, you again approached the office of the DPP for guidance?
Wathi-ke athi kumele ngemuva kokuthi umsolwa oqala babushiwe lapho-ke bese wabuya wenza i-confession yakhe futhi wabuya wakhomba-ke lapho-ke bese ngemuva kwalokho-ke kwaboshwa kumsolwa wesibili-ke ngemuva ukuthi umsolwa wesibili aboshwe kwenza ama-confession amabili-ke lapho-ke usho ukuthi ngemuva kwalokho kona wahamba waya noma wahamba wavakasha kuhhovisi labeshushisi ekhize kutholeke i-guidance noma izeluleko zokuthi kumele usebenze kanjani.
Yeah, so my lord, I can agree that there was a continuous communication between ourselves with the DPP, but the view was not to say we have this prosecute. It was evidence or investigation that still needed to be followed on, but yes, they were kept abreast in terms of where we are, but certain things were too obvious for us to follow, so it would be just to keeping them abreast as we're doing it. We're communicating with that office, and obviously then they will suggest or give opinion in addition to what we're thinking in line of investigation, in light of what we're having at the time.
Athi yebo khona-ke kunjalo kepha ngesikhathi leso bona kade bekhulumisana noma kade beqhumana isikhathi iqembu lakhe futhi nabashushisi abakhulu-ke basehhovisi labeshushisi la ePretoria ngesikhathi lesi kade besenza kusesha kwecala noma kade bephenya-ke icala leli.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now, it is on record that there was a lot of investigation done in this case which related to the downloading of the cell phones of accused number 3, the fact that there was a ballistic analysis that was also done as it allegedly affects accused number 3, and a whole lot of other issues. But at the end of it all, having assembled and also the cell phone data records, like cell phone communications between the accused themselves and other parties that they could have communicated with. After all that information was assembled, then you approach the office of the DPP Pretoria for a decision as well, not so?
Wathi-ke ngemuva kokuthi lapho nathatha kumakhalekhukhwini kamsolwa wakhe bese nathubula-ke konke lonke ulwazi khona-ke ngaphakathi kucingo lwakhe-ke bese nenza futhi ama-ballistic report mayelana nomsolwa wesithathu-ke lapho noma ama-ballistic report la kade koketha khona-ke umsolwa wesithathu-ke lapho-ke futhi nothi udownload yonke-ke inkulumo ade zikhona phakathi kwabasolwa-ke wena-ke njengomseshi wecala-ke wahamba futhi wavakasha lapho-ke kuhhovisi labeshushisi abakhulu ekuthize nithola isinqumo mayelana nokuphenya kwecala.
That is correct, my lord.
Athi yebo kuqiniso lokho.
Now, would this be the day on which you went and made a presentation on all the information that you had assembled thus far, or up until that moment?
Manje ummeli yabuza ukuthi ngabe lokhu kumayelana nodaba lolu lwazi kade-ke unalo ngesikhathi buhamba yobatshela noma mhlawumbe kwenza presentation ngelimi lesingisi-ke mhlawumbe balethela mayelana nenkulumo yolwazi kade unalo kabashushisi.
Yes, there was a presentation done, my lord, in relation to what we had at the time, and that is, and I'll summarize to say, relating to the accused before court, and obviously, Ms. KwelikaMeyiwa, at the time, we felt that she was a trigger point. So there was such a presentation, and subsequent to that, and after to this part, a decision was taken to move on these 5 accused, and then subsequently, then the warrants were applied, issued, and then the matter was enrolled, my lord.
Athi yebo khona-ke kunjalo kade khona-ke presentation la kade wahamba khona-ke wabesawunikisa wotshela abashushisi abakhulu mayelana nolwazi kodwa nalo-ke ngesikhathi besesha icala leli-ke uyasho khona ukuthi kula khona-ke wabakhipha-ke ama-warrant bese ba-authorize bese bavuma ukuthi yebo akuhanjwe kuboshwa-ke abantu laba-ke futhi athi ngesikhathi leso futhi noKwelikaMeyiwa naye igama lakhe aqhamuka ngesikhathi kusenzeka konke lokhu.
Thank you. This presentation, remember you are the one who introduced us to the concept of presentation that you made to the office of the DPP, not so?
kumuthi wena uqhambene ligama leli bathi presentation le wahamba khona ke utshela abashushisi malana nalo kade unakho ke mhlawumbe ebabukisa malana nakho konke kade unakho malana necala leli asinjalo.
No, my lord, it was introduced by Advocate Mnisi. The term presentation, just the question before this, is the one that said there's a presentation. What I agree on is that there was a presentation made to the DPP, so I didn't think that perhaps one should focus on the word presentation. The summary of facts of the docket was presented to the DPP in the form of a memorandum, and that's how we do it, where we summarize all the facts, but in a written document. Who will be the witnesses, what is the evidence, you forward it to the DPP, then you get a formal communication, my lord.
Athi lapho ke umnumzana Mnisi uqhambene ligama elithi presentation athi bona kuma bemikisa kodaba lawo mhlawumbe docket lapho kubashushisa abakhulu lapho mhlawumbe nolwazi abanalo lapho ke athi babhala ke memorandum sithi mhlawumbe into esasibukise njengento sithi mhlawumbe incwadi nje noqeshe lencane lapho bhala khona ke malana nodaba lwenkulumo abanazo ke uma bebhalela ikubisa abashushisa abakhulu ke lokuthi lokho abanakho futhi nabafakazi abanakho bazokhuluma ngalokho ya ilokho nje phela.
Thank you, Brigadier. You know, when we dealt with this issue on when I did the case on behalf of accused number 3 and we touched base on this presentation, I never had it in mind that you were talking about the memorandum. I thought that you went to the office of the DPP, you went into a boardroom, and the gurus and the big heads at the office of the DPP got in there, and then they said, Mr. Keninda, the rostrum is yours. Can you please tell us what you have in relation to this case story? I thought that is how it happened. But now you're saying it was only in the form of a memorandum.
Athi ke ummeli kade angazi ukuthi uma khona presentation ukhuluma ngememorandum ukuthi mhlawumbe wayenza nohlelo obabiza ukuthi memorandum yena bathi ngomcabango ukuthi uma khuluma ngepresentation siwahamba lapho kwaya kuvisa labashushisi abakhulu ngesikhathi ufika lapho ke bizwa ngeke igumbi elikhethekile ababiza iboardroom ngelimi lesingisi ke ngesikhathi lapho besathi umnumzana Brigadier ke ngoba unolwazi uthize onalo ke lapho ke tshela ukuthi usitshele malana nakho konke onakho.
No, I think, my lord, then perhaps there may have been a misunderstanding if that's the impression that was given. It was the presentation, the memorandum was drafted, and then it was presented with the original docket to the DPP. And after the advocates, the DPP read, I suppose, then applied their mind, a communication was then communicated to me to say we're indicting the following accused on the following charges, in terms of the normal procedure.
Athi lapho ke ucathi mhlawumbe ukungazwana ethi khona phakathi kommeli futhi naye ke ufakazi ngoba athi presentation yakhe wayenza ngohlelo ababiza ukuthi memorandum la kade abhale khona ke phansi futhi ngesikhathi bakabhale kade kuphelekezwa i-original docket ngesikhathi kade amikisa konke lolu lwazi lakhe kade alibhalile lapho kuma ubisa abashushisi abakhulu ke bethi bese yathi abashushisi kade bekhona lapho bahlala phansi bese bafaka umcabango wabo lapho ke bese yathi asiqhubekeni ngesithweseni kabacala noma after qhubekeni nokuxosa kabasolo amacala mana cala leli abalenziwe.
Thank you. So that we do not get ourselves confused, or not ourselves, so that I do not get confused again. Now, you've made mention of the fact that when the matter landed on the shores of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutor, Pretoria, on the 26th of January 2019, yourself, Brigadier Perumal, you saw Advocate Baloyi, the lead prosecutor in this case, Advocate Leonard, and Advocate Mahwata. Now, when you say you saw them, what do you mean? Was that for purposes of presenting something, or you had a roundtable discussion with them?
Bathi ufuna ukuthi ngelanga la 26 ngonyaka 2019 ngesikhathi idocket noma kale lisa ngomofisa se-DPP la mkhuma kusabashushisi la uthize khona abantu abamnumzana Brigadier Perumal ngesikhathi bothi nabona ke umnumzana Advocate Baloyi futhi umnumzana Leonard futhi umnumzana Mahwata futhi mhlawumbe abona ngeso lenyama noma bazobona ngazo.
So what I mean, my lord, is that firstly, that was the first time we introduced formally, beside knowing the advocate in various matters, insofar as this matter, that was the first time we were meeting as a team with that prosecutorial team, my lord.
Athi lapho ke noma mhlawumbe sele wahlangana naye ke umnumzana Advocate lecala leli ona mhlawumbe okumholi wabashushisi lecala leli ke noma wahlangana naye okulecala leli enkanti mhlawumbe
and that's why, my lord, I think I did testify as well that in that meeting, the two members, this is now Warrant Officer Makubo and Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi, were also present. I think we found them there, myself and Brigadier Perumal. My recollection, I think we would have found them there.
Uthi ngokukhumbula abantu mhlawumbe Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi no Officer Makubo babathola lapho sele bakhona ke yena ke no Brigadier Perumal ngesikhathi kade beya lapho ke bevakasha kuma office obashushisi.
Now, subsequent, my lord, obviously because I do recall that in that meeting, the Brigadier took an exception in terms of the protocol, the discipline that he was of the view was not being followed. But subsequent to that, the two members left, and then myself and Brigadier Perumal remained with the investigation, with the prosecutorial team, and that is where now basically the concept of whether they were intruders, because that was really the first day that I can place ourselves with the new prosecutorial team, was then discussed to say, based on the docket, we think they were intruders, and these are the reasons, and then obviously the way forward was then discussed. So it was, and I'm trying to summarize it, so it was the first encounter between ourselves and the prosecutors in charge of this matter, my lord.
Athi mhlawumbe uthi isikhathi soqala la bahlangana khona ke the team balabashushisi abakhona ke lecala leli ngelanga lelo behlangane ngalo ngelanga la 26 ngonyaka January ngomnyaka 2019 la ka iqembu leli abashushisi kade lihola khona ke umnumzana khona ke namuhla lana phambi kantolo oshushisa icala leli ku-Advocate Baloyi besho khona ukuthi khona ke abanye amaphoyisa lapho kuyagcina ke hama ngendaba zemhlamba kade ngaphethe kahle ke kepha uthi na ngesikhathi kade libuka ke document leli docket leli ke kulabo bathi khona ke bafunda khona ke bese banikeza izathu zabo ukuthi abantu laba abantu abangena ngaphakathi endlini besebenza kubudidingo noma mhlawumbe benza kudlala lokho akade benza lapho ke bese babuya futhi banikeza izathu zabo ukuthi kungani kade besho kanjalo lapho kade sele nomnumzana uBrigadier Perumal.
Yes, and this point, my lord, of saying the allegation of whether they were intruders or not intruders was discussed because the two members, my recollection, were in that meeting when the Brigadier was there and myself. They were it was made loud and clear that their view is that there were no intruders. And at that time, as I've said, that was the first time I actually saw at a glance, at a distance, the docket 3751 of 2019. Not perusing it, but I saw it because then reference was made to it to say, no, there's a defeating docket, there were no intruders. And obviously there were a clash of protocols as the brigadier felt, he's the senior person, and I don't want to get to that, but that concept, my lord, was that allegation was raised. And then after the two members left, then the brigadier, based on the docket, and we presented on what is contained in the docket, and then the way forward of investigating, and then we left, my lord, with that mandate of doing investigation and copying and keeping the communication channels open as and when the investigation was carrying on.
Athi lapho ke kungaso lesikhathi kade bebonkana bona ke bezesiphoyisa lapho ke ngaphambi ukuthi amaphoyisa amabili ke ahambe khona ke noma ngaphambi ukuthi yena ke futhi nombrigadier bathe ke simusuka bahlale phansi ke bahlala baqhubeka nomhlangano wabo ke ngesikhathi kade bengaboni ngasonye kade bekhuluma ukuthi mhlawumbe abantu laba ngabe mhlawumbe igebengu igilamkhuba ezazingelanga phakathi lela khaya leliyana bese zadala lokugebengu ezabudana noma kade kusenzekani khona lapho ke bezathi ngemuva kwalokho ke ubrigadier Perumani futhi naye ufakazi lapho thatha khona ke isinqumo sokuthi abahlale phansi ke bese bapresente malana nodaba abanalo noma malana nolwazi abakade banalo futhi bamikise izathu zabo ke lapho ke uyasho futhi khona njalo ukhulumile ngedocket leli ababiza 375 of 1 of 2019 thina sile walibanje kancane kepha akaza libukisise lonkana ngaphakathi.
Thank you, Brigadier. You say in the midst of the discussion, Buthelezi and actually when you arrived, we are now talking about the 26th of January 2019, when yourself and Brigadier Perumal arrived at the offices of the DPP, Buthelezi and Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi and Warrant Officer Makubo were already there.
Nayo thize ngesikhathi kade lifika ngelanga lange-26 nivakashela ehhovisi labashushisi abakhulu la ePretoria nathola khona ke Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi futhi noWarrant Officer Makubo sele bakhona lapho ke.
Yes, that's my recollection, my lord. I do know that previously I said I do not know whether we found them there or they would have arrived after that. But my recollection is we found them there, my lord, and then we found them seated, and then we allowed also to sit with the prosecutorial team.
Athi yebo khona kunjalo nomcabango wakhe ukuthi mhlawumbe bona ababathula sele bakhona lapha noma engena isiqiniseko ukuthi ibona abafika qala noma abo Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi futhi noWarrant Officer Makubo abafika qala noma bafika ngemuva ukuthi bafikile lapho ke kepha bahlala phansi bonkana bese bakhuluma futhi neqembu labashushisi.
Now that you're saying your recollection says that you found them there, were they in the company of the prosecutorial team? That's now Advocate Baloyi, Advocate Leonard, Advocate Makwata. Were they busy in a discussion when you arrived?
Njengoba uthizeni abathola sele bakhona ke lapho ke Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi futhi noWarrant Officer Makubo ngabe kade behlezi neqembu labashushisi bekhulumisana nalo noma?
My lord, the impression I got is that we just arrived. We were following each other within a few seconds because the impression I got is that they would have arrived just maybe a few minutes before us, and I think it was just an early discussion. I may be wrong because, like I said, I don't know what time they arrived. All I know is that we found them there, and then after we joined them, we got into the two dockets, the 375 and this matter.
Athi yebo ke khona njalo abathola sele bakhona ke lapho ke kepha akazi mhlawumbe bathola sele benesikhathi esingangani ngaphakathi mhlawumbe bafika lapho ke benemizuzu mhlawumbe benemizuzwana sele befikile kepha ngesikhathi ade behlezi lapho ke phansi ke lapho kade bekhuluma khona ke bonkana futhi neqembu abamaphoyisa noma abaseshi bezesiphoyisa futhi ke neqembu labashushisi kade behlezi phansi bekhulumisana khona ke lapho ke malana namadocket amabili ke lapho leli singalo phambi kwenkantolo njengamanje futhi nelinye ke docket ka 375.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now, just to have a clearer picture, at this point in time, because we're speaking of a docket that you were able to identify at a distance, at a glance, the split in the team that you have been referring to, had it already occurred, or you were still working as a team?
Athi mina docket leli sibili kokhuluma lutho alibonela ke ekudini kancane ke ngabe mhlawumbe imali neqembu lelini ngabe besele qhubeke phakathi ngesikhathi leso noma bengaqhubeki phakathi?
No, I think we're still communicating, my lord, but the cracks were already there. It was clear because, as I indicated, my lord, previous evidence is that even when this docket was opened, I only got aware after it was registered that there is such a docket. And as I say, the first time I saw it was, and not actually really perusing it, seeing it at a distance, was at the table of the DPP. And then really the first time where I had to see what is contained in the docket, it's when it was ordered by the previous presiding officer, my lord, that it must be disclosed to the defense, and we were then tasked with Advocate Baloyi and the DPP to actually get it and disclose it to the defense. So that was much later in the years. So the split, the cracks were there, but going down, I think a couple of months from there, it was a complete separation, my lord.
Athi lapho kade khona ke ama-cracks manje khona kungaboni ngasonye phakathi kwabo njengeqembu leziphoyisa njengeqembu labaseshi beziphoyisa ke lapho ke kepha kade benako ukuzwananyana okuncane ngesikhathi kade behlezi lapho ngomofisa abashushisi abakhulu ke lapho ke futhi yasho khona ukuthi malana nedocket leli kade akhulumile ngalo ka 375 bayaqala ukubona ke lapho ke futhi babonela ekudeni kade ngabonela ke eduze futhi akaze afunde ngaphakathi abona ukuthi ngabe yini ebhaliwe ngaphakathi noma kade kuyini engabhaliwe ngaphakathi kodwa docket lelo ke kepha ke inkosi enkantolo kade ihlezi kulicala leli eyasho khona njalo docket labalethele enkantolo futhi bafunde bonkana enkantolo kulawa khona wathola khona ke isikhathi sokuthi abuke malana nokukhethwa ngaphakathi kwedocket lelo.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now, when you went to the office of the DPP on the 26th of January 2019, you then found Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi and Warrant Officer Makubo there. Was this a coincidence, or there was a prior arrangement as a team that on that day you needed to go and see the office of that you needed to go to the office of the Director of Public Prosecution, Pretoria?
Athi-ke ngelanga lange-26 ngenyanga kaJanuwari ngomnyaka 2019 ngesikhathi ngivakasha kumahhovisi abashushisi abakhulu abala ePretoria-ke ngabe kade kuyinto mhlawumbe engajwayelekile mhlawumbe kade kuyinto eyenzeka ngendlela engajwayelekile ukuthi uhlangane no-Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi futhi noRani Makhubo khona lapho noma mhlawumbe yinto senayikhuluma qala emalangeni adlule.
My lord, I do not recall, as I indicated at that time, Brigadier Perumal was appointed as the lead, and that's why he got hold of me and he tried to get hold of the members, and then subsequently say, we need to go and see the DPP so that he can place himself on record and, and make them aware that he is going to be part of the investigation and taking the matter forward. So I do not know whether between him, it may have come up when he spoke to them telephonically, I don't know, my lord, but there was no arrangement made by me for them to be there, my lord.
Athi lapho-ke ngeke abe nalo ukulazi ukuthi mhlawumbe lokho kwenzeka kanjani-ke ngesikhathi ukuthi ngesikhathi behamba behlangana futhi nabanye abasebenza nabo ku-Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi futhi no-Warrant Officer Makhubo ngesikhathi belapho kumahhovisi abashushisi abakhulu la ePretoria ngoba athi isathu sakhe nake lapho-ke kade ukuthi umnumzana uBrigadier Perumal bekumele ukuthi ahambe ayotshela abashushisi abakhulu bala ePretoria abakade bephethe idocket leli-ke ukuthi naye-ke omunye wethimba labaseshi becala leli. Mhlawumbe ngabe yena-ke waxhumana nabo ocingweni mhlawumbe abashayela ngaphambi ukuthi yena-ke ufakazi onokhona phambi kwenkosi enkantolo ahambe aye khona lapho-ke ngoba ukuthi akanalo ulwazi ukuthi konke lokho kwenzeka kanjani kepha bafica bekhona lapho kumahhovisi wabashushisi.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now you're saying in the course of the discussion, like in the middle of the discussion, the two, Warrant Officer Makhubo and Lieutenant Colonel Buthelezi, then opted to leave. They decided to leave the meeting when it was still happening. Did I get it clear there?
Athi manje ummeli ngabe kuzwe kahle ukuthi wena uthize uRand Officer Makhubo futhi nomunye umnumzana uButhelezi bona bathi isinqumo sokuthi abahambe-ke umhlangano nosiloko uhlezi benza uhlezi noma ngesikhathi kade ngiqoqa umhlangano wenu bona-ke bathathe isinqumo sokuthi kumele bahambe.
Yes, my lord, as much as I may not recall word for word what was said, but they left while the meeting was on and they left us there. So we carried on with Brigadier Perumal and the prosecutors, so the two left us there, my lord.
Athi yebo kunjalo amaphoyisa la amabili-ke ayihambela lapho-ke nanoma ngekhe akhumbula amagama ashiwo kulo mhlangano ngaphambi ukuthi amaphoyisa amabili-ke lawo ahambe-ke bese yena-ke ufakazi futhi noBrigadier uPerumal basala nethimba labashushisi ngesikhathi belapho kulo mhlangano wabo.
Now, as a participant in the meeting, if you were to tell this court what necessitated their departure, what would you say?
Manje njengomunye kade ukhona-ke wethimba lezi siphoyisa noma ithimba labaseshi noma ithimba labashushisi noma ithimba labaseshi becala vele noma uphenye kwecala-ke ungatshela inkantolo ukuthi yini eye-airport la thize igcine behamba.
My lord, my recollection, and I think I may have touched base on it before, was that Brigadier Perumal took an exception about what he viewed as ill discipline in terms of the protocol, because there's command and control structure. He was the senior person, and arrangement should have been made through him. It's a protocol. It's nothing unusual unto that. So the fact that they were found there, and I know also that he was struggling, because up to that stage, he wanted to get the 375 docket in order to advise the National Commissioner of what was contained there, based on the mandate that was given. And I do recall that he faced a challenge in receiving that docket, or the copy thereof from the members.
Uyasho khona njalo ngeke abe sakhumbula kahle ukuthi mhlawumbe yini esathu senzeka lapho-ke kepha-ke njengokuthi umnumzana uBrigadier Perumal kade kuyena-ke omkhulu noma induna kade ikhona-ke phakathi kwabo-ke lapho-ke noma umsebenzi noma iphoyisa elikhulu phakathi kwabo bonkana lapho-ke ngesikhathi kade bekhona-ke lapho-ke uyasho ukuthi khona njalo-ke yena-ke wabona njengamaphoyisa angayiphethe kahle ngoba khona-ke i-protocol ekumele ukuthi bayilandele mhlawumbe umthetho ukuthi bawulandele njengamaphoyisa futhi usho ukuthi lapho basebenza ngokwey'khundla zabo iphoyisa elincane kumele lalela iphoyisa ikhulu bese iphoyisa ikhulu ukuthi ingathi kumele lenzeni lapho-ke uyasho khona ukuthi uBrigadier Perumal lapho-ke bekafisa noma bekafuna ukuletha idocket lela ka-375 ku-National Commissioner mayelana nalo besathole isinqumo sakhe besatholeke uvulo ukuthi kumele benze njani-ke mayelana nedocket lelo-ke.
Yes, my lord. So in summary, as much as I may not recall word for word, he was not happy with the conduct, let me put it that way, of the two members.
Athi njengoba imphile kade engayijabulele neze indlela abezesiphoyisa ababili kade bephethe ngayo.
Thank you, Brigadier. Just to rest assured, this is not an indictment on anyone. I just want to know the background. Do you understand? Thank you. Now, it seems to me that already on this stage, there was another case docket that was being investigated parallel to the one that you are also investigating also.
Athi-ke manje uyena-ke umele kutshakala ukuthi ngalo leli langa leli kade khona-ke enye idocket kade nisenza-ke kusesha manje niphenya mayelana nayo kuhambisana futhi necala leli noma nedocket leli kade unalo kuwena kusenjalo.
Yes, it is so, my lord, but it is also prudent to mention that the matter that relates to the death of ngomsolwa, it's only the matter that is before court. The matter that was investigated by the two members relates to the docket that was opened somewhere in January 2019. There is no assertion that the deceased was killed on that date. He was killed on the 26th of October 2016. And that docket relates to defeating charges, insofar as I can recall, insofar as the charges. But yes, there was, to answer that docket, there was a docket that was said to be investigated by the two members parallel to this one, my lord.
Athi yebo kepha kukhumbule khona njalo ukuthi mayelana necala leli esingalo phambi kwenkosi enkantolo ilona kade bephenya lona-ke yena-ke ufakazi kepha-ke abaphoyisa laba ababili-ke bona kade bephenya icala leli lango-2019 laka-275 lapho khona-ke kade bethusa noma kade bephenya icala lokugwema kusebenza kwendlela yezomthetho.
You know, Brigadier, when I'm telling myself that I'm working with you, then you're leaving me in the lurch. Now, you're saying there's no other docket that was investigated in relation to the death of ngomsolwa except the one that you were investigating. Now, the question that immediately comes to my mind is, what was the context or the content within which this other case docket that was investigated by, or that you saw in the office of the DPP on that day? Within what context was it being investigated? Was it not in relation to the death of ngomsolwa as well?
Manje kuyabuza ukuthi mayelana nedocket leli esibili-ke walibona lapho kumahhovisi abashushisi abakhulu-ke e-DPP ngesikhathi kade uneqembu abashushisi abakhona phambi kwenkosi enkantolo futhi nethimba lakho leziphoyisa-ke ngabe idocket lelo kade lingekho ngokuthi kuphenye mayelana nokushona ngomsolwa.
No, my lord. So what I'm saying is,
yes,
The matter, and I'm talking now the facts, factual facts. What you have, the crime scene that relates to the death of Senzo Meyiwa occurred on the 26th of October 2014. There is no other scene other than that scene. So that is the basis of why we are before court, my lord.
athi lapho cha kusinjalo ke ngoba uSenzo Meyiwa washona ngelanga la nge-26 inyanga October ngonyaka 2014 futhi yona ke isona isizathu leso esenza ukuthi lapha kusenkantolo njengamanje.
Now, relating to this docket 375, my lord, that was opened in January 2019. What I do know, because I've then since had an opportunity to look at it, my lord, it relates to allegations that the witnesses or the people who were inside the house lied when they said they were intruders. So it seems to suggest that there were no intruders and the deceased was killed by one of the people who was inside the house. That's what it seems to suggest. But the charge there is one of defeating and not murder. And that is why I'm saying the murder docket, and I'm speaking to murder in terms of its definition. The person that was killed is Senzo Robert Meyiwa, and the date of the incident is 26 October 2014, not 2019. That is why I'm saying in 2019, a defeating docket was opened for the witnesses who are the people who are inside the house in this matter, my lord.
athi lapho ke asikhumbule into yodwa ukuthi idocket le esingalo noma esikulona njengamanje lapha kusenkantolo ke idocket licala lenzeka ngelanga la nge-26 inyanga October ngonyaka 2014 la kwabulawa khona ke uSenzo Robert Meyiwa bese uyabuya futhi ukhuluma nodaba lwedocket lesibili ke ukuthi idocket lesibili lavula lona ke ngenyanga kaJanuary ngomnyaka 2019 la kade bethi khona ke kade besola khona ke mkade benintsholo khona ke ukuthi ke abantu bonke lapha kade bekhona ngaphakathi kulo muntu kade beqambe amanga bengakhulumile iqiniso futhi begwema ukusebenza kwengalo yomthetho mayana kuqiniso ukuthi ngabe kahle yini enzeka ngelanga lela nge-14 nge-26 October ngonyaka 2014.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now, as I understand you, is that the if I were to call it that way, the reason for the cracks to happen in the investigating team is because some members of the investigating team held the view that at the same scene, on the same date, which is the 26th of October 2014, there were no intruders. The death of Senzo Meyiwa was caused by a person that was in the, or by one of the people that was in the house. Whilst the other view that was held by the other section of the investigating team is that on the same scene, on the same date, there were intruders. Do I, or should I understand the whole context of the existence of these two dockets in that fashion?
athi ke umeli manje kuthanda ukuthi abuzeke ithizeni mhlawumbe azwisiseke la madocket amabili ke ngendlela ukuthi kade angafanike ukuthi mhlawumbe ithima leli noma into eyakhokhela mhlawumbe into eyadala ukuthi beneqhabuka phakathi kwithima lenu njengabaseshi bamaphoyisa ke ukuthi amanye amaphoyisa kade ke bona ke bethi lapho ke akukho umuntu owangena noma mhlawumbe igebengu ezangena ngaphakathi kulo muzi lakhalela bese zadubula ke umufi kepha ke bathi bona ke umuntu owadubula ke umufi kangabe akukho omunye wabantu bekhona ke ngaphakathi kula muzi lana ke kepha kunyihla ukuthi ke ithimba leziphoyisa bathi bona ke nomthimba labaseshi lithi khona ke lapho ke my point is my lord I couldn't get the whole
The other section
Yes.
of the investigating team
yes
holds or held the view that there were indeed intruders.
lapho ke thank you counselor lapho khona ke elinye ithimba labaseshi becala bathi khona ke bona ke basothi kade khona ke abantu mhlawumbe igebengu ezazingenela kulo yamuzi.
So, my lord, I'll answer it this way. Yes, I agree there were two, there's this docket 375, but I wouldn't attribute the separation to this view or this different understanding of what really happened. Okay.
athi yebo khona ke kungaba njalo kepha ngeke ahambisane nenkulumo yakhe ngogcwele ukuthi wena ke mhlawumbe kade khona kungaboni mhlawumbe ukubona ke ngendlela ezimbili phakathi kwalecala.
And I'm saying that with greatest respect, my lord. I think it boils down to discipline, in my view, because even if you differ with your superior, I've not seen a situation when you differ with your superior and then you take things and go to, I don't know to what office. There's a protocol, there are measures in place, and the directive that was given to us, me as the leading investigating officer, these members was that I'm the leading investigating officer. The team that is supposed to guide us in this investigation was one team that we ended up with, and that is the one with Advocate Baloyi was part of. At no stage did this prosecutorial team said we must be separated. We were there. All that needed to be done was to present the evidence, and then we get guidance from the NPA based on the evidence, not opinion of what I think, based on the evidence that we've collected, and then they make a decision, and then you take the matter forward if there is evidence to take it forward, my lord.
athi cha lapho ke kusinjalo ke uma angayibeka ngale ndlela elandelayo ukuthi ukuthi khona kade khona kungayiphathi kahle ke phakathi kwethimba lakhe leziphoyisa nekade besesha icala leli ngoba khona ke umgwaqo noma mhlawumbe umthetho manje olandela lapho ngabe besebenza khona ke lapho ke asukuthi mhlawumbe omncane ephoyisa encane kwamele liphikisane nephoyisa elikhulu kulona ke futhi uthi imbangela yalokho ukuthi amaphoyisa la ethimba lakhe kade ngayiphethe kahle ngoba kade kuye ke kade ahola ke ithimba lakhe labaseshi licala leli ke futhi asho ukuthi kuyizathu leso esenza bahambe bakumofisi abashushiswa abakhulu ke futhi ekuthize bathole ke indlela yokusebenza ukuthi bangasebenza kanjani mhlawumbe zeluleko zokuthi bangasebenza kanjani eziqhamuka kwithimba labeshushisi.
And my lord, in addition to that, I've indicated previously right at the inception, rather after we appointed, and after I've made copies to all different members, to say what is it that informed me at that stage, because that part was important to look as to whether they were intruders or not intruders. And I've allowed this exercise to all the members to say, let's go and read the docket separately and come together to address the issue of whether do we think the evidence contained in the docket indicates that there were no intruders or there were intruders. Because after we've answered that answer, my lord, or given an answer to that question, then the next thing will be the direction of the investigation, whether we are pursuing the people who are inside the house or we are looking for the intruders. Now, I've also testified, my lord, that after reading the docket, and I've given numerous reasons of things that I found, I could find no basis that there were no intruders, but contrary to that, they were intruders, my lord. I found it in terms of objective evidence, and I found it in terms of Mr. Ngashe, the senior, the warrant officer, who says in his statement he blew a whistle and one of his sons were chasing the perpetrators. They chased them to the park and came back. That evidence was there. Now, on what basis can I ignore this? And I'm simply giving the background to say why was this view and why I didn't agree with this view. So my view is that you investigate, my lord, with greatest respect. You present the evidence to the NPA, which was available to us. And if the NPA had said to us, no, there were no intruders indeed, we're going with 375, that would have been the position that I would have had to respect, if I think it's correct, of course.
Athi lapho ke ngemuva kokuthi kuyatholeke idokethi leli wahlala phansi nethimba lakhe ngesikhathi likahlala phansi nethimba lakhe bese wanikeza amakhophi ukuthi nabo bahambe bofunda ke bese babuye futhi athe nombuzo ukuthi ngabe lapho kade kwangena igilamkhuba noma kaze kungena igilamkhuba ngesikhathi bebuka idokethi leli bese wacela bahambe bofunda idokethi leli ke bese babuye bakhuluma malana nalokho bona abazwisisayo malana ngemuva kokufunda idokethi leli kepha yasho khona njalo makhuluma ubufakazi bakuthi kulapho khona futhi ngesikhathi bahlangana nabashushisa bekhulu ke bethimba labashushisi kula bafunda khona nedokethi leli abanalo njengamanje lapho ke ngoba khona ke umnumzana unqashe la wakhuluma khona ukuthi wayena ukhalisa impembe lapho ke ngemuva kokuthi akhalisa impembe bese indodana yakhe agijimisa ke labantu abadala ngaphakathi lelikhaya lelana ngesikhathi kade senzeka lobugebengu noma ngesikhathi kade kusenzeka lodlame lolu lapho lelikhaya leli kade kwenzeka khona ke isigameko leso.
Thank you, Brigadier. I would have imagined when the gentleman and the lady there, the warrant officer Makubo and the Lieutenant Colonel Wutilezi left the office, they had their head bowed down and probably throwing tantrums and saying, I see a hammer, on that note, Manot, I'm going to request that we take an adjournment for the day.
Okay, what's the time now?
I don't know how much.
minutes past 1, my lord.
Oh,
21?
Minutes past 1.
So when do we come back?
13:21.
13?
Yeah, 13:21.
Okay, thanks. 13:21 then.
we're coming back tomorrow, my lord.
Is it tomorrow?
Yes.
Why so then?
As I've indicated earlier on, my lord, there's a record that I need to go touch based on a subject that we had left hanging in relation to the minutes and the evidence that it relates to what could have happened at Torko. Thank you, my lord.
The stage, what's your view?
Well, we are in the hands of counsel, my lord. We are not going to object.
Ngiyacela khona njalo ukuthi umforo oqala ukuthi lapho ukuthi nesithathu athole isikhathi lesi ukuthi ahambe ufuna mayana nofakazi lokho ekhuluma ngabo ke manje nezinto ezenzeka ngesikhathi kade umsola lapho lapho lejele lakhona ke ngoba ufuna ukuthi masibuya kusasa ke siqedele udaba lolo ke bese uhlangana ezombuso nalo ukuthi alenayo inkinga uma basesimisa ke namuhla malana ngahlelo lokuqapita uqale.
Me, Mr. Mnisi, I thought you had read all the records. I thought you had read all the records of this trial.
Indeed so, my lord.
So what are you going to check? Because you know what you're going to check. You
No,
must have read it.
but really the court, my lord, would really be expecting the possible. I'm not a computer in the head. I still need to go and redefine my reading, and that is going to happen frequently. I just need to be sincere with the court, my lord, because I could not have recorded in this little head of mine more than 40,000 pages of information. My head would have bested.
Mr. Ramsey,
As the court persists, my lord, I'm not going to object.
why am I going to object?
My lord, if it takes a toll on my learned colleague and he needs to verify his information, who am I to buy informed in that manner? So I suggest that it's good and proper that he be afforded an opportunity to refamiliarize himself with the information that he wants to do.
Mr. Mamalo,
I have no objection, my lord.
why?
My colleague is requesting an adjournment.
Okay. Let's adjourn until tomorrow. Mr. Mnisi says it's going to read the record.
Asikhona nomzana manje inkosi enkantolo iqale ehlekiselela ngalakusasa ngoba ummeli ufuna ukuthi ahambe ufunda mayelana nakho konke okushicilelwe phansi lenkantolo.
Okay, tomorrow then. Are you available?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Thank you.